Welcome to the show, everybody. You're listening to the Dance of Life podcast, and I'm your host, Tudor Alexander. Hope you're doing well wherever you happen to be. It's certainly a crazy world out there, and today we're going to put our finger on the pulse to see where everything is going, which, of course, hopefully you already know if you've been watching my various videos on the end times and this series, which is the Venerable Day of the Sun End Times News Coverage Series. There's been a lot that's happened in the last few months and weeks. So I just want to give you a quick little housekeeping review. You can now grab all 1,000 plus hours, close to 1,100 hours of my content on USB. It's been updated. So if you are interested in having my content offline and having a hard copy, then the USB is definitely the way to go. Make sure you check it out and you can see what all is in there. If you got a USB as one of the early adopters, don't worry, you have not missed out. You can upgrade the USB with a digital download for the difference of the content that was released in late 2025 all the way through approximately like fall of 2026 of this year. Fennec has also been updated with major updates, so make sure you check the website and read about that. You can also check him out. Just go to fennec.danceoflife.com and play around with him. He's got a lot of different features, especially now. What I really like is that you can ask Fennec, give me the best Bible verses on, insert your favorite topic there. And he will list out a bunch of verses, which is very super useful for immediate debates, discussions, for, personal study. If you're doing home Bible groups or home churches, those can be really useful things. My new book, The 7 Transformations, Finding the Narrow Road by Pursuing a Sovereign Christ, that's been out now for about a month or so. As of the end of the Salvation series, we're now doing the recordings on every Friday, so you can listen to it for free. The book is a great book. It's a synthesis of all of my work in the last 5 years and 1,000 plus hours in the library, and it combines everything that I've learned into one cohesive perspective to show you how every true doctrine is connected and fundamentally connected to the sovereignty of God. And by contrast, how every false doctrine is connected to denying God's sovereignty in one way or another. There's also been some big content releases recently, like my video on why the Catholic Jesus is actually Satan, which is a very important video to watch for the context of the New World Order that we're headed to. My interview with Christian on his podcast about the coming New World Order delusion that is coming. That's a great synopsis of everything that's going to happen and happening as far as I'm concerned, biblically and historically. My video, Independence Day, which of course is what this episode is named after. And of course, that video is titled Independence Day, Celebrating Catholic Contributions to American History. You can learn all of the nitty-gritty about Catholic contributions in American history because right now the Catholic propaganda war machine is positioning itself to redefine American patriotism and American just being American in the Catholic image. And of course, whenever you have Catholicism, you are undoubtedly going to have historical revisionism because Catholicism always needs to justify its existence, when in fact, history, when accurately analyzed, reveals Catholicism has been very subversive everywhere it's been. So make sure you watch that video and get familiar with true American history. Of course, it's not everything that's ever happened because that would take hours upon hours upon hours, but it's a great synopsis of many important events all the way from the nation's founding up until 9/11 and beyond. And like I said, this episode today is named after that, and we called it Independence because America's America's always been destined to serve the beast, and we are now, as of the 250th anniversary, independence. We are independence to the beast. We are a country that has been subjugated for a very long time, since at least after the Civil War. And now America's final role in deceiving the nations is going to come more and more to the surface. It doesn't feel that way right now because America is going under a lot of turmoil with Trump and Zionism and various political and economic shenanigans, but a major threshold has been passed, and as this current administration will continue to burn to the ground, the political system as we know it will go with it, and so will the economy, so will everything, because that's going to make a proper foundation for the common good reality to kick in, for the Pope to come in and save the problem, for the Catholic patriots to take control and to model true American patriotism and America first and all of this stuff. What you're seeing is a giant dark to light initiation ritual that is being done over this nation. And of course, over the rest of the world in that context too. So make sure you review your American history and help your friends get out of the matrix, especially out of the Jew room in the matrix, because everybody seems to be stuck in that room one way or another. And so they're not deceived. And with that, make sure you subscribe. Leave a like for the algorithm. Make sure you comment something that you learn, hopefully something edifying to help others. If people have questions, help them out, or use Fennec. You can use Fennec and help them out, or cite things that you learn. If you want to support me, you can go to the website, danceoflife.com. Please, either way, go there and stay on the email list. Even if you prefer to watch on YouTube, I don't have a problem with that. The email list is just there as a baseline foundation that we can stay in touch, because I don't trust YouTube. I really don't. Even people who like to watch on YouTube, there's been so many times I've heard where people get unsubscribed. They don't get notifications anymore, even though they have them enabled. So there's a lot of shenanigans with YouTube. With an email, you can't go wrong with email. Email is email, at least until they fundamentally change it. Who knows, maybe they won't. But until then, email is still the king. Email is directly to your inbox, and you get it every time unless it goes to spam. But then if you mark it as okay, then you're always going to get a notification. So make sure you get on the website, danceoflife.com. And like I said, if you want to go further than that, you can become a paid member. You can donate. You could check out the store. There's a lot of great educational materials there, health supplements, all kinds of great things. If you have any questions about any topic, make sure you ask Fennec. Fennec is an amazing tool, and as of the time of this video, I'm cooking up something even more amazing with him, but I'm not going to reveal any of that. But let's just say he's going to get a pretty awesome upgrade in maybe in another 2 or 3 months or so. We'll see how long it takes me to create it. But it's going to be pretty awesome. He's already really, really awesome, but he's going to be even more awesome. That's an amazing tool. And that's for paid members, obviously, but $5 a month is less than buying a coffee these days. So I think that's pretty reasonable for what you get. With that said, today is very straightforward. Recall that in the last VDS episode that I did, I announced that I will no longer be doing montages for several reasons. Not because I don't want to work, but there's just several reasons, key reasons why I'm just not going to be doing montages anymore. So if you were really looking forward to a montage, I'm sorry. I know montages are fun, but they're also kind of a pain in the ass, to be quite honest with you, for many reasons, not having to do with the actual work to produce them, but rather the policing from YouTube and all of the technological shenanigans that go into it. So I've decided to stop doing that. I want to just focus strictly on the news. The first 25 episodes of Venerable Day of the Sun, which total probably around 160 hours. Today is approximately the 2-year anniversary of VDS, because I started VDS, I think, July 8th of 2024. It was like July sometime right before the Butler shooting. So we've got 2 years of Venerable Day of the Sun episodes with over 160 hours of content in just that series alone. There are many people on YouTube who don't make 160 hours of content per year in total from all what they do. So it's been quite a lot of content. There's a lot to document. And of course, if you want a good history of the last 2 years, then you can watch this series and you can watch the montages, because I think I started montages around episode 9 or 10 or something like that. Nevertheless, if you want to help me and be part of creating these episodes, then please go to the website and go to the resources page. And then under resources, you're going to find a page called Watch Foxes, as in like watchmen or watch women, but watch foxes. And on that page, there is a running list of things that I'm looking for, things that are important, because I'm not looking for everything. I usually tend to cover something until I realize the direction it's going, and then I back off all the way, or I start covering much less of it. I'll give you an example. In 2024, I was really covering Zionism and dispensationalism and why it's wrong, and et cetera, et cetera. And then I realized that Israel is going to collapse. The Jews are going to convert. They have to. Dispensationalism was just a ruse. It was designed by the Jesuits to self-destruct so that the Protestants could completely implode. Once I realized all that, I don't care anymore about all the Zionism, dispensationalism narratives. Same thing with Trump. Trump, I covered, last time, the conflict between him and the papacy. And I realized that Trump is not there to bow down to the Pope. He's there to make the Pope look good by his failure. So Trump is crashing and burning. I don't really care about all of the drama concerning Trump or Epstein or all of the things that are going on with him. I know the direction it's going. I don't have a crystal ball, but just using logic and pattern recognition, it's pretty clear that this administration is designed to crash and burn, just like the Biden administration was designed to crash and burn. It's the same thing. They're just doing the same psyop, folks. It is a different package, but it's the same psyop. The same narrative, which is designed ultimately to crash the system. So again, I'm not looking for everything. Make sure you go watch there. What I am looking for mainly is really culture shaping, people converting to Catholicism that are influential. That these kinds of things are very important. You also have, by the way, just another plug for Lexica. Lexica is an app that I spoke about last time. Jonathan, who is a friend of mine and also a listener, developed it. It's a very interesting app. It's been actually quite updated now since the last time. You can check it out at lexica.bible. And one thing that I really like about it, which I think is super cool, Jonathan has built a news feature that uses RSS feeds and aggregates them and then passes them through an AI checker that goes according to the filters that we're looking for. And the AI then scores these articles according to, their relevance. Like, this is like a really, like a score of 9 on a scale of 1 to 10 is very relevant. A score of 5 is not so relevant. And you can sort through news stories that are already pre-filtered according to what we're actually looking for eschatologically, which I think is really, really cool. So you can check that out. I think it's a great resource, great page all in one place, on top of the fact that it's got, a word study and all that kind of stuff that we looked at last time. So make sure you check that out. It's Lexica, Lexica.bible. And I believe for the news feature, you have to create an account, but nevertheless, make sure you check it out. Either way, my goal today and going forward in the coming VDS episodes is just to have a pile of stories to comment on them as we go. And that'll be that. Just very, very straightforward news coverage. There's still lots to go over, especially since it's been more than a month since last time. And then the next one's going to be towards the end of August. And then after that, come September and moving forward, I'm going to be doing them once a month. So hopefully they'll be a little more manageable, depending on how many shenanigans they pull every month, right? But nevertheless, let's see what the cat dragged in, right? This is from Instagram, and this is from that user Sachi Natil. However you pronounce it, he's a Catholic influencer. He's always covering Catholic stories. It says, France's National Assembly has decided not to adopt a provision that would have required Catholic priests to disclose information heard in confession after strong backlash. And of course, these kinds of shenanigans have happened in the United States as well. And what it all boils down to, folks, is that people need to realize the Catholic Church has had the oldest Secret Service spy intelligence network in history. The confessionals of these priests, especially the Jesuit priests, they were the confessors to kings. They knew everything that was happening before the internet, like 500 years before the internet was ever created. They knew everything that was happening because they had their foot in the door at the highest levels of society, taking the confessions of these people, all their dirty little secrets, which not only could they use to plan, various schemes, but also blackmail these people and so on and so forth. Because they abused the position that they were in, which is to be in the name of God, to be, basically a spiritual guide and so on. They abused these things, which was what do you expect. But another point, people look at this and they don't see the problem. If this was a Jewish thing or some Noahide situation or, passing Jewish laws or whatever, something having to do with the Jews, people would be frothing at the mouth. But they don't realize what this means, that the Catholic Church basically has immunity with these confessionals, that all of these agents like cardinals, bishops, archbishops, these various priests and orders are ultimately citizens of a foreign nation that can be extradited at any point and not face legal consequences, which has happened so many times in history. So many times in history. But the more you know, right? This is from EWTN News. Elected officials recognize grassroots June celebration of Fidelity Month. This is an interesting little movement, and it's just one of many culture-shaping situations that is now happening as everything is going from dark to light in this country. A grassroots movement to celebrate faithfulness to God is being recognized by state leaders during the month of June. So June used to be all about gays and pride, and now it's metamorphosing into the Sacred Heart of Jesus month and Fidelity month and Family month and Conservative Values month and all these things. Several elected officials are recognizing Fidelity month, including the governors of Arkansas and Utah. Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders of Arkansas recently announced her recognition of the month, along with Governor Spencer Cox of Utah, the Kentucky Senate, and Major Jerry Wires of Glendale, Arizona. Fidelity Month was founded in 2023 by Professor Robert P. George. Remember that name? Because we're going to look it up. An American legal scholar and professor of jurisprudence and director of the James Madison Program in American Ideals and Institutions at Princeton University. Gosh, that just sounds so neutral and like academic, but you'll see very shortly that all of these people, when you dig deep enough, they all have roots in the propaganda machine of the beast. He was inspired by a Wall Street Journal poll that showed declining rates of commitment to patriotism, religion, having children, and community involvement among Americans. Christopher Parr, a spokesman for the movement, told EWTN News. We believe that faith in God, our spouses and families, and our country and communities are the source of America's unity and strength. Professor George thought it would be fitting for Americans to take 1 month of the year to rededicate themselves to these basic values. Again, these things aren't bad. They really aren't, like, just in principle. Like, you should want the good of the family. You should want the good of your nation. These things are common sense. But what is the agenda behind this? Again, I've said it a million times. I'll say it again. The beast is going to use the good things, like the family, like faith in God, like, having a good country. All of these things are going to be used against people and for the end of destroying them. Parr described Fidelity Month as a grassroots movement, not a top-down organization. Yeah, right. You'll see how grassroots it really is. We grow as individuals, congregations, and organizations find our mission compelling and join it each June, Parr said. That's why we list numerous ways that people can celebrate Fidelity Month on our website and organize programs such as our webinars and high school essay contest. We give some direction on the website, but our emphasis is on Americans taking initiative to celebrate and promote Fidelity Month in their communities. Parr said Fidelity Month has seen steady growth in our social media and website engagement, event attendance, and the number of organizations and elected officials partnering with us since its inception 3 years ago. And by 2028, it's going to be even bigger. Those involved seem to be from many different backgrounds and across the country. Our hopes are that each year more and more Americans will come to celebrate June as Fidelity Month. Sanders formally recognized June as Fidelity Month on May 29th, saying that Fidelity Month provides an opportunity for residents to reflect on and renew commitments to these shared values and institutions. The United States of America was founded on the values of faith, liberty, and patriotism as acknowledged in its founding documents and in the statement of its founding fathers. The proclamation reads, The commitment of Arkansas to spiritual and civic institutions is at the core of the state's collective identity. The proclamation continued, cultivating fidelity to God, family, community, and country contributes to human flourishing and supports a healthy, stable, and well-ordered society. It's going to look so good, man. When it's all coming together, it's going to look great. If you don't have biblical discernment, it's going to look great. We are honored whenever elected officials choose to recognize June as Fidelity Month. We hope that people will recognize Fidelity Month as an opportunity to unify all Americans around what matters most. Unify, that's the word of the day, unify, meaning ecumenical, meaning lukewarm, meaning everybody take the mark on the hand or the head, whatever, doesn't matter. Just join this thing because it's going to be great. That's the kind of reality being portrayed to you. Now, it's always fun to take these people, you see these little movements and say, now with the power of technology, let's do a little research. Robert P. George was born in 1955. He's an American legal scholar, political philosopher, and public intellectual who is 6th McCormick Professor of Jurisprudence and Director of the James Madison Program in American Ideals and Institutions at Princeton University. Boy, what a mouthful. He lectures on constitutional interpretation, civil liberties, philosophy of law, and political philosophy. George co-founded the Witherspoon Institute, where he is the Herbert W. Vaughan Senior Fellow. He's also a Senior Fellow of the American Enterprise Institute and is the Ronald Reagan Honorary Distinguished Professor of Public Policy and Newt Barr Honorary Distinguished Professor of Law at Pepperdine University. He has been a visiting professor at Harvard Law School. So he's definitely involved with all of these agencies and institutions. And of course, you know that a lot of these secret societies are associated to Harvard and Princeton and Yale and all that. So it's very interesting. Now, if you look at his political activity, it says George twice served as the governor of West Virginia Democratic Youth Conference and attended the 1976 Democratic National Convention as an alternate delegate. He moved to the right in the 1980s, largely due to his views on abortion, and left the Democratic Party as a result of what he saw as its increasingly strong commitment to legal abortion and its public funding, and his growing skepticism about the effectiveness of the large-scale government-run social welfare projects in Appalachia and other low-income rural urban areas. In 2009, George founded the American Principles Project, which aimed to create a grassroots movement around his ideas. He is a past chairman of National Organization for Marriage, an advocacy group opposed to same-sex marriage, and co-founder of the Renewal Forum, an organization that seeks to end sex trafficking and commercial exploitation of women and children. George was one of the drafters of the 2009 Manhattan Declaration, a manifesto signed by Orthodox, Catholic, and evangelical leaders. Hello. That the New York Times said promised resistance to the point of civil disobedience against any legislation that might implicate their churches or charities in abortion, embryo-destructive research, or same-sex marriage. He has also joined with Muslim scholar Sheikh Hamza Yusuf in urging hotel chains and other businesses to refrain from offering or promoting pornography. He has worked closely with his former student Rabbi Meir Soloveichik and with Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks of Great Britain to combat anti-Semitism. Much of George's work on religious liberty has centered on the idea that religion is a distinct human good, which he asserts allows people to live authentically by ordering one's life in line with one's best judgments of conscience. So a lot of political involvement, very serious political involvement, a lot of ecumenical shenanigans with him. But, that's a very tame description. Let's go a little deeper and say, hey, Gemini, give me all the connections Robert P. George has with Opus Dei, Heritage Foundation, Koch Foundation, Knights of Malta, Council on Foreign Policy, Family Research Council, and any other extreme conservative and or Catholic culture shaping institution. Isn't that nice? You can just do that and you can find your information. Let's see. He is widely considered the most influential conservative Christian intellectual in the United States. He has vast overlapping ties to prominent right-leaning libertarian and Orthodox Catholic organizations. Heritage Foundation. He's the former trustee of the Heritage Foundation. George was unanimously elected to the Heritage Foundation Board of Trustees in March 2019. He resigned from the board in 2025. But Family Research Council, he is a board member. George has served as a member of the board of directors for the FRC, a prominent fundamentalist Christian lobbying group. Christian is putting it really nicely. It's a fundamentalist Catholic lobbying group. It's very ecumenical, but if you look at the people behind it, it's nothing but Knights of Malta members that are, of course, loyal to the Pope. So these are the big ones, folks. Heritage, Family Research, Opus Dei, Knights of Malta, Council on Foreign Relations, Charles Koch Foundation. These are some really big cultural shaping institutions. All of these are loyal to the beast. And of course, they come from different angles, and they have leapfrog organizations and LLCs and projects and movements and grassroots this, grassroots that, when in fact, it's really just the illusion of grassroots movements. But let's read some more. Family Research Council. We already read that. Knights of Malta. George is an inducted member of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. There it is. Never fails. Specifically, the American Association, an elite centuries-old lay religious order. Sure, that's what it is. Council on Foreign Relations. George is an active member of the Council on Foreign Relations, the prestigious and traditionally nonpartisan foreign policy think tank, which, by the way, people like, I think Leonard Leo, who's tied to Opus Dei, on these, either Council on Foreign Relations or Family Research Council. I forget which one he's on there. A lot of fanatical guys that basically want to turn America into a vassal state are interconnected with these. Opus Dei, intellectual and spiritual ally. George is not a formal member of Opus Dei prelature, but he maintains close ties. He is a frequent speaker at the Catholic Information Center in Washington, D.C., an influential hub managed by Opus Dei priests. He has publicly praised Opus Dei's spirituality for helping Catholics strengthen their spiritual muscles in public life. And isn't Opus Dei the one that got caught with their pants down with a bunch of human trafficking, and he's trying to fight human trafficking? So what do you make of that? What do you make of the fact that the organization that he's praising, that he's knee-deep in cahoots with, is doing the thing that he's claiming to be working against to stop? What do you make of it? Well, what you make of it is the same thing you make of all these Catholic charities that on the forefront are helping society and doing all these things, when in the back they're just laundering money and human trafficking and doing it. It's the duplicitous nature of the devil. Charles Koch Foundation, financial beneficiary. George does not hold a formal position within the Koch network. However, his academic brainchild, the James Madison Program in American Ideals and Institutions at Princeton University, has historically received major financial grants from the Charles Koch Foundation, alongside other conservative mega donors, to fund right-leaning academic fellowships. You have to understand that probably since around the 1950s, with the John Birch Society, with the Koch Foundation, Heritage Foundation. There's so many of them, folks. There's so many. I've outlined like all the big ones, but there's so many of them. And all of these ones, in turn, spawn little leapfrog organizations and LLCs and groups and movements. And there's so much going on that the whole design of this is to obscure the hidden hand behind all of it. But again, if you have proper biblical understanding and proper historical understanding, you understand very simply that Revelation 2 tells you that the devil gave his throne and power and great authority to the papacy, because the papacy is the beast. So all of these organizations that are ruled by fanatical Catholics, by Knights of Malta members, by people connected to the Jesuits and other crazy orders like Opus Dei, you understand that ultimately these things are working for the same common end, the common good, which is not really very good for you and I, because we're not going to be participating in that common good. There's some other elite culture-shaping affiliations: the Witherspoon Institute, Federalist Society, Ethics and Public Policy Center, the Lynd and Harry Bradley Foundation, National Organization for Marriage, First Things. I've covered some of these before. Most of these are Catholic or Catholic-leaning, Catholic-influenced. Their members are Knights of Malta members or in cahoots with other people who are Knights of Malta members. It's all just one big network. And this is how they shape culture, to where it seems that what you're dealing with is something grassroots and everybody's picking up on it and it's spontaneous. It's just like the echo chamber. I've covered this before this year, that like 90% of the conservative right is Catholic in terms of like the influencers and people who are shaping culture. 90% of those people are Catholic. And that way it seems like, oh, everybody agrees on this reality, when in fact, really it's just a multi-headed hydra just talking to itself. And you're there listening to one head, then another, and then you figure, oh, there's consensus, but really there is no consensus. It's just one, system validating for itself. So that's George. That's, what's his name? Robert George? Robert P. George. So don't let that fool you. Why Catholic philosopher Robert P. George matters to Protestants. This is from 2023. It's a while ago, but the point is, you can see the ecumenical shenanigans. In my video, Christ is King, I talk about how ecumenism is not just liberal. It's not just like Vatican II, super hardcore liberal kumbaya type of thing. You also had around that time all of these, again, these leapfrog organizations on the conservative side that were designed to ecumenize with hardcore right-leaning Protestants, Calvinists, theonomists, and this is exactly what you see with all of the Christ is King movement. And the only thing is that these Protestants, who are such stupid Protestants, because they've abandoned biblical eschatology, true biblical eschatology, which is amillennial historicism, which is practically what all the reformers believed in anyway, but they've abandoned that in favor of, Seven Mountain Mandate, theonomy, post-millennialism, all kinds of stupid things. They believe that Catholicism is an ally. They believe that Rome is their ally against the Jews, against the Muslims, against the atheists, against the communists, against the LGBTQ Rainbow Party. Like, they think that Rome is their ally, when in fact Rome is really just using both sides, the conservative Protestants and the left-leaning crazy liberals, to achieve its purposes. And then at the end, it's going to throw both of them under the bus. And this is what you see. You see this type of stuff, this Protestants that are like, oh, this Catholic philosopher is just such an influential thinker and he's doing so much for society against the evils of secularism and, whatever else, Islam, that seems to be the common boogeyman. And in the process, the Protestants are laying down their guard. They're ecumenizing with Rome. And I forgot what I was going to say, but basically they're going to get suckered. They're going to get suckered into the final trick. Either they're going to get thrown under the bus or they're going to have to play along. This is from CBN News on Facebook. Islam is dead in Iran, says Mohammed Faridi. He grew up in Iran's Islamic martyrdom culture and was trained to be a shaheed in the IRGC until he found out about Jesus. Now, as thousands of mosques close and the Islamic regime loses its grip on the hearts of the people, something extraordinary is happening. Oh yes, indeed, it's something. It's going to continue happening because the Middle East has to be transformed. Islam is going to collapse. Islam is so dead. If you've watched any of like the popular apologetics channels, like David Wood's channel or God Logic, all these guys that are like hardcore refuting Muslims left and right, Islam is a joke, especially with the internet and how people are learning more and more and watching. Islam is collapsing. Islam is collapsing faster than ever before. So the Middle East is going to need an upgrade, a transformation. And of course, that will come by way of some sort of destabilization, which is what's happening now with all the whole Iran war situation. But something's going to happen, and the Muslims will be converted because Islam is a joke. It's the greatest false prophet in history is Muhammad. Anyway, this is from Angel Studios. This is a movie called Young Washington. And it just, what stuck out to me, somebody sent me this and said, look at the little Jesuit son behind Young Washington. I'm like, yeah, that is the little Jesuit son. And of course, you know all about Angel Studios. They're just culture-shaping tool, ecumenical, Catholic, Mormon, just this lukewarm churchianity type of reality that is now making all of these movies, all these conservative movies, painting the image of the beast and doing all this historical revisionism to paint history and reality in a particular direction so that people can be entranced in this image, in this idea of a Christian nation. Which is, of course, very far from the truth. Washington might have been a Catholic, maybe not, maybe he was a closet Catholic. I talk about it in that video on American history. But certainly the people who were starting this country, a good portion of them were nowhere near Christian at all. And the other ones that weren't about to force others to be Christian either. And also they hated Catholics, so there's that. But here we are 250 years later, and what do we see? We see independence. This is from Sachi on Instagram. As Catholics in the United States celebrate the nation's 250th anniversary, it's possible that the country's next president could also be Catholic, either J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio. Well, whether it's J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio or Gavin Newsom or Alexandria Cortez or some other oddball candidate, it doesn't matter, folks. Again, you got multiple heads of the Hydra. Some of them are blue, some of them are red, but the Hydra's underneath. And the Hydra doesn't care who you vote for because all the heads belong to the Hydra. So it doesn't matter who it's going to be. But the point is that what you will see, just common sense. Okay, I don't have a crystal ball, but just think common sense. After they swung everybody hardcore to the left with Biden and completely destroyed the Democratic Party, now we are in real time destroying the Republican Party with Trump, doing copy and paste with Biden, having this old incompetent buffoon in the office who is, just completely incompetent and completely destroying politics in the process. What do you think is next? Do you think there's going to be another destroyer? Do you think the next person after Trump is going to be like this radical, personality that's super arrogant, super boastful, says stupid crap all the time? Do you think that's the kind of person that's going to come along? Or have they traumatized people enough to where people have now divorced themselves from the system and they're ready for a middle-of-the-road, clean-cut, not really, extreme kind of figure? Very common sense. So whoever it's going to be, it will be a very middle-of-the-road kind of person that will seek to unite everybody, just like the Pope is uniting everybody. And that person will very likely be Catholic, although even if he's not, it doesn't matter because he will be very friendly with the Pope. That you can count on. The dynamic between the Trump administration and the Pope right now is not sustainable. First off, American history tells you that anybody who was actually against the Pope was killed, especially before the Civil War and with Abraham Lincoln leading up into it. And actually even after that with Kennedy and some others. But if you were actually against Catholicism, if you were actually against the Pope, you didn't live too long. So the fact that Trump is playing this game with the Pope, it's whether, to what degree it's actually serious or not doesn't matter. The point is that it's not sustainable. America must bow down to the beast, and it will. So just add 1 and 1 together. 1 + 1 is 2. The next candidate, whoever it's going to be, will be very middle of the road, be very well spoken, not going to be somebody that's going to say stupid things like Trump. He's going to try to please everybody. He'll be very friendly with the Pope. He'll be submissive to the Pope. So do the math. Is it going to be a Catholic? Very likely. Very likely. If not, doesn't matter. He'll still be Catholic when it counts, if you get what I mean. So this is where we're at 250 years later. This is where we have come with this country. Now, this is very interesting. There's a lot of propaganda now with this whole FIFA World Cup going on. And of course, if you understand how these things work and what their purpose is, it's very obvious. It says, the FIFA World Cup was invented by Jules Rimet, a Catholic who served as FIFA president from 1921 to 1954, a remarkable 33 years, the longest presidency in FIFA history. That's interesting. Just like how the Olympics was started by basically a Jesuit operative right around the end of the 1800s as an ecumenical, as a way to bring the world together under the beast. These are just Greco-Roman games, folks. These are Greco-Roman games of Babylon to bring everybody into this common worldly mentality. Meanwhile, you can see while this is happening, you're going to see propaganda left and right with this. People focus on all the satanic stuff going on in these events, but they don't see all of the churchianity, Catholicism, Catholicization programming. They see all the performances of the stars and all the satanic stuff, but they don't see all the Catholic propaganda. Here's one. It says, Adidas produced a World Cup Christian jerseys with the word Jesus saves. Why is this trendy now? Like, if this is what the world, you have to ask yourself, folks, if the Bible tells you that friendship with the world is enmity with God, and it's very clear that for the most of history of the last 2,000 years, like, the world and God have been very obviously in conflict. And now suddenly we're at the end of history, the last 100 years or so, whatever, and you see all of this like friendliness with the world. Like, the world is wearing jerseys for this pagan-inspired sports, fiesta, and people are going to these events wearing a jersey by a company that is named Adidas, and the jerseys say Jesus saves. And this is like fashion now. This is like something that you're doing, and people are like signing up to it. Like, what does that tell you? Does that tell you that the direction of the New World Order is like Jewish or communist or Muslim? Or does it tell you that the New World Order is going to be a lamb-like exterior where it's really hip and trendy to be a Christian, and the word Christian pretty much will lose all meaning whatsoever? And we're going to have to go back to saying, I'm just a follower of the way because I don't want to identify with your Christian reality because I'm not that kind of a Christian. So this is where we're at. This is where we're at. But the propaganda is very strong. This is that guy from Norway, Erling Haaland or whatever his name is. Norway is experiencing a remarkable growth in Catholicism. The number of registered Catholics has increased from about 46,000 in 2009 to 168,000 in 2025. So in 16 years, their Catholic population has multiplied 3.5 times, 350%, making the Catholic Church the country's second largest Christian denomination. That's right. And pretty soon it's going to be the first too. And what do you have on the right here? On the left, you have this, I don't know who this is. He's some bishop or priest of some kind. And on the right, you've got this Erling Haaland dressed in his Norway, Viking outfit, and he's looking super masculine and, like a Viking, and he's hardcore. And there's an association happening here. Do you understand? This is like marketing 101. When they wanted to associate Camel cigarettes with a desirable and healthy outcome, they made ads in the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s or whatever of doctors recommending Camel cigarettes. Or they would put a hot girl next to something and say, oh, see, look, this is very attractive, very good. So what's the association being made here? That to be masculine, to be a Norwegian, to be a Viking means to be Catholic. That's what this is. Patriotism. This is the kind of stuff that they're doing in the United States with America First and all this Catholicization of American patriotism. That's what they're doing with Norway with all of this FIFA World Cup, getting these superstars like Erling Haaland to do their little dance and do their Viking poses, meanwhile associating them to Catholicism and saying, look, Catholicism is the way to go. Look how strong this guy is. This is typical marketing, and people eat this stuff up
People eat this stuff up, especially when they're being traumatized from another direction. Here he is again. Norway striker Erling Haaland was seen wearing a rosary around his neck. Oh, you don't say. And then he's with a steak. He's got his, I don't know what this is, like some kind of drink. He's got his rosary. He's like the dude. You want to be like him. He's got his rosary. It's cool to have your rosary, guys. Just eat your steak. Pray your rosary a couple times and so on. Here he is again. Haaland bought a rare manuscript that tells the story of Norway's Viking kings and their conversion to, it says Christianity, but really it's Catholicism. They converted to Catholicism. And he bought this rare manuscript and he donated it, I believe, to, he bought the Heimskringla Saga for 1.3 million Norwegian kroner and donated it to his hometown library. So he bought this thing and he's donating it, and he's really, he's not just a soccer player. You're noticing that these people are not like athletes. They're culture-shaping propagandists that are there doing little poses, associating themselves to certain ways, investing in certain things to shape the culture so that people can say, oh, look, this is our hero. Or what is our hero doing? He's praying the rosary. Maybe we should be Catholic again, and so on. So this is the stuff that is happening in a very subversive way. Here's another one. Messi from Argentina receives rosary blessed at the Vatican from a fan during FIFA World Cup. So the Catholics are all over this. What do you expect with a Catholic-created festival designed to unite the nations under the beast? And there he is with his rosary. There's some more. Team USA goalkeeper Matt Freese reveals he's a listener of Father Mike Schmitz's Bible in a Year podcast, or whatever the show is called. But Father Mike Schmitz is, again, another culture-shaping tool. He's a very good-looking guy, very youthful, always about the Bible, yet he leads people with the Bible to the Catholic Church and to the man of sin. And here he is, this guy, Matt Freese, and he's saying, oh, I just love the show, but you should check it out. Father Mike Schmitz, it's a great show. Bible in a Year, you like to learn the Bible. And all these people who are agnostic or maybe questioning, or, they used to be Protestant, but maybe they're kind of lukewarm now. They see all this stuff because this is a worldly thing that everybody can get around. Do you understand the point of all this? This is part of the seductions and flatteries and harlotries that Rome puts out into the world. Because all of these people that watch these shows and these sports that get all hung up on what ball is going to what court, most of them are not believers, right? So this is a way to unite people who are not believers with people who are part of the Catholic Church, and to cross-pollinate and to get you to come, because let's say you're an agnostic and you're watching this and you really like Matt Freese and you've really been getting into soccer and whatever else, and you see this statement from Matt Freese. He's like, oh yeah, I love Father Mike Schmitz. You're like, huh, that's cool. Well, I look up to this Matt Freese guy. Let me check out Father Mike Schmitz. I've been feeling kind of lonely lately. Let me get some spiritual guidance. And Father Mike Schmitz is there, and he's, oh my gosh, he's so charming and nice to listen to, and he says a few nice things about the Bible. Then he points you to the Catholic Church, and then pretty soon you're going and doing your conversion and getting baptized and taking the Eucharist. This is how the FIFA World Cup is an evangelization tool for the Catholic Church. And people don't see it. They're focused on, the Jews or whatever else is happening. All the goats in the World Cup are devout Catholics. There's a biblical meaning there too, if you catch it. But tells you everything you know. All the goats. Not only did Erling Haaland do a hat trick on Israel and use one of their own players to score a goal, Norway donated all the money they made from that game to Palestine. So Erling Haaland is quite he's full of many shenanigans. If you've watched him play, he does all these kind of little shenanigans where he kicks the ball into the dude's face and then it goes into the goal. And he does a lot of these little, crazy kind of shots. And so he pushed this guy. Let's see, did they have a video of it? Yeah, so if you watch him, he pushes this guy. This is an Israeli player. He pushes him. I mean, he is good at what he's doing, but he pushes the Israeli, makes him shoot the ball in his own court, his own goal, past the goalie, and then they take the money from that game and donate it to Palestine, which, of course, what is this? What is the greater commentary here? What's the narrative? The narrative is like, oh, look at that, look at that Catholic hero sticking it to the Jews. This is a political statement because in the backdrop of the world political situation, where all of these governments are kissing Israel's ass, especially the United States, This is a cultural icon that people can rally around. Do you understand what's going on here? This is not just like, oh, just roughhousing and some crazy stuff happened. This is a planned political statement so that people watching this, because everybody's watching it now on their phones everywhere you go, this is an amazing ecumenical opportunity for the Catholic Church. People watching this who are so unsatisfied with their Zionist-occupied government, clowns that are in their government, and they see something like this, and they see this Enric or Henry, what's his name? Dang it. Anyway, Holland. They see Holland pushing the guy and basically making a statement like, oh, stick it to those Jews. Like now, like all the attention is on this guy. And what's this guy doing? Well, he's praying the rosary. He just happens to be talking about how Catholicism is so great, etc. So do you see what's going on? This is all just ecumenical shenanigans, man. U.S. Catholic Congressman Riley Moore has announced a resolution recognizing June 12th as Solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. So the Catholics are all over June and trying to continually shape this country's holidays and months and pushing through all of their leapfrog organizations and their statutes and their resolutions to make America Catholic. Whether it's those grassroots, quote-unquote grassroots movements with Robert P. George and all the things that they're doing, or this Congressman Riley Moore and the Sacred Heart of Jesus month, all of these things are very prophetically significant if you understand that America is the second beast that is designed to resurrect the first. This is from Advent Messenger. National Billboard campaign seeks to convert America to Christ and the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is using America's 250th anniversary as an opportunity to evangelize and promote what it views as spiritual renewal of the nation under Christ. Catholic leaders see this milestone as a chance to highlight the Church's contributions to American history. Yes, please watch my video Independence Day to see and celebrate Catholic contributions to American history, the real ones. To reaffirm the influence of Catholicism in the United States and pray for the conversion of the nation's people in future generations. A nationwide billboard campaign is being led by Catholics for Catholics with the stated goals of bringing the nation to a greater allegiance to Jesus Christ and the Catholic Church. This is really the problem. It's the and in that statement. I'm totally fine with allegiance to Jesus Christ as long as we're talking about the real Jesus. But then you got the and the devil is always about adding to the finished work of Christ. It's and the Catholic Church. We're there too, right in between you and Jesus. That's the problem. Through highly visible messaging across the country, organizers hope to use this occasion of America's 250th anniversary to advance a vision of spiritual renewal centered on Christ and guided by the teachings and missions of the Catholic Church. And of course, you'll see many of these billboards going out throughout the country. And what does it tell you? It tells you that we're very close, folks, because if the Founding Fathers saw such a thing, they would faint and drop dead back in their graves. But here we are 250 years later, and it's time for America to fulfill its purpose prophetically. One nation under Christ. Here, look at this Christ. Is this? We'll talk about this, but is this the Christ of the Scriptures? Like what Christ is? What Christ is this? This is not a biblical Christ. That's not what the Bible describes Jesus as. Yeah. Get out of here, stupid thing. Okay. Yeah, like if you look at it, you say biblically accurate Jesus in Revelation. You just type that in. Like Jesus in Revelation is supernatural, man. I mean, he's got eyes of flaming fire. He's a bloodstained robe, white horse. He looks like a lamb with 7 eyes, 7 horns. I mean, light radiating skin like burnished bronze, like bronze in an oven, like gleaming, radiating power. That's what Jesus actually looks like. So what Jesus are we talking about? That's why I said go watch my video, why the Catholic Jesus is actually Satan. Because this is what it's about. You see? I mean, these are just AI images, but they're designed to show you a difference, because the Christ of the world, the Eucharistic Christ, is this effeminate Leonardo da Vinci, sun worshipping, powerless Christ that can't keep you saved. But this is the Christ that they want you to have allegiance to. Whereas the Christ, the real Christ, is in heaven ruling. He has a sword, he's got bloodstained robe, he's got a white horse, he's got red flaming eyes, he's radiating power and glory. Very different Christ. And the Bible, interestingly enough, we'll come back to this again, but the Bible does not describe Jesus when he first came. Think about this very clearly. We'll talk about this again at the end, but the Bible does not describe Jesus at his first coming. There's actually, I think, only one description in Isaiah where it says there was nothing really about him that was very attractive or significant. But that's about it. Like, it doesn't tell you how long his hair was. It doesn't tell you whether he had a beard or not. It doesn't tell you how dark his skin was or how light his skin was. It doesn't tell you how much muscle he had. It doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't tell you how tall he is. It doesn't tell you anything. And yet, you have a lot of very vivid descriptions about how he looks like when he returns. Keep that in mind, because that is a very, very important eschatological point. There's a lot of images about why, or I should say how he looks like when he returns. Now, this is historic. This is a video of the Spanish Parliament. Erupts in 7 minutes standing ovation and chants, "Long live the Pope." Here is the Pope at the Spanish Parliament. I think this is like the first time in hundreds of years. And they're applauding him, and he's there as the center of attention, people marveling after the Pope. There he is. And he's just taking all of that attention from them. Which, of course, this is the beginning of the end for Europe. Europe is going to come back to being under the papacy again. Europe has been secular long enough, and they've certainly paid the price for it because they have been pushed to their extreme with all the secular policies, including all of the immigration that has been forced into Europe of all these low-class immigrants that have completely defiled all of these places that were once, very glorious and so on. And of course, that's by design, so that people miss that reality. They miss Christendom, which of course, Christendom really just means the empire of the beast. So people will long to return to what Europe once had, which is exactly the point. So this is the beginning of the end. This is the beginning of the end for Europe, and you're going to see more and more like that. Here's Pope Leo again. We cannot consider AI to be morally neutral. In reality, every technical tool embodies choices and priorities through what it measures, ignores, and optimizes, and how it classifies people and situations. Ethical discernment cannot be limited to asking whether we are using a system for good or bad purposes. It must also examine how that system is designed and what vision of the human person and society is embedded in the data and models that guide it. It's actually true. Like, what he's stating to you is very true. What he's stating is very true. But what does it tell you that the man of sin who seeks to be worshipped is reigning in AI? What does it tell you? Prophetically, what does that tell you? Something important, hopefully. Now, here is a raging LGBTQ liberal, and she is frothing at the mouth for Pope Leo XIV. So pay attention. Let's see what she has to say.
Is that bitch, will always be that bitch, has always been that bitch. Pope Leo just put out his first ever encyclical, which is essentially a letter that goes out to every person of power in the Catholic Church. And what did he write it on? The dangers of AI. The Pope wrote a 42,000 word anti-AI manifesto. This next part is literally the introduction. This is how he starts the whole thing. Humanity, created by God in all its grandeur, is today facing a pivotal choice, either to construct a new Tower of Babel or to build the city in which God and humanity dwell together.
Now, pay attention to this, because this shows you the power of the devil in full display, if you can see it. This woman, like I said, she's a liberal. You go to her Instagram page, she's like a lesbian. She's liberal. She's very vehemently liberal. And she is reading to you that first paragraph from Magnificat Humanitas, which I read to you last time, which frames the entire encyclical as to what he wants to do. He's presenting the world with a choice. Either we can go towards the dark New World Order, which nobody wants, it's the Tower of Babel, or we can go towards the light New World Order, the city in which God and man dwell. Well, that comes from St. Augustine, the city of God, and Augustine was a frothing at the mouth. I mean, who knows if he was a Christian or not, but whatever. He was frothing at the mouth for institutional supremacy. Christian nationalists love Augustine. So the city of God, or the city in which God and man dwell, this is like a theocratic situation. Now, a liberal who's all about gay sex and liberal values and whatever else, and identifies that way, is the last person on earth to validate a theocratic situation. By design, liberals and theocracies don't really mix. In fact, they're antithetical to each other, like the French Revolution was antithetical to the monarchies of Europe. So monarchies were very theocratic in nature. French Revolution was very liberal and, progressive in that sense. But yet here we are, by the power of Satan over this person's mind, and she's marveling at what the Pope wants to do. That he's presenting this option, and he's all against AI, and she's all on board with the vision of building the city in which God and men dwell together. A liberal. So,
spitting fire right out the gate. Artificial intelligence needs to be disarmed. The word is strong, I know, but deliberately chosen because this moment needs words capable of attracting attention, awakening consciences, and indicating paths forward for humanity. Another portion. It is not enough to invoke efficiency, nor to celebrate the benefits of innovation if they are built on the chain of exploitation that remains deliberately hidden. If technology promises emancipation, yet produces new forms of global subordination, it stands in contradiction to the fundamental principle of human dignity. If the human being is treated as something to be perfected or surpassed, it becomes easier to accept that some lives are less useful, less desirable, or less worthy. In the name of progress, necessary sacrifices may begin to be justified, placing the burden on the most vulnerable in pursuit of a supposed optimization of the species. For this reason, a clear distinction must be made. It is one thing to integrate technology within a human-centered, relational vision. It is quite another to be guided by an outlook that devalues human limits and promises a purely technical form of salvation. Hold on, because then he quoted Lord of the Rings. The 20th century Catholic author J.R.R. Tolkien, in the words of a protagonist in one of his novels, described our responsibility in this way. It is not our part to master all the tides of the world, but to do what is in us for the succor of those years wherein we are set, uprooting the evil in the fields that we know, so that those who live after may have a clean earth to till. Shit, I gotta go back to Mass.
Do you think it's going to be difficult for people to take the mark on the hand or the head? Do you think it's going to be difficult? It's going to be a cakewalk. It's going to be an absolute cakewalk. This liberal who is incomplete by her beliefs and the things that she believes in theory, stands in opposition to any kind of theonomy or theocratic government. And yet here she is. I love you, Leo! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. I got to go back to Mass. I have to come back to this reality because Leo just cares about the people. He has social justice, and that's how they're going to get you. Because on one side, you've got social justice, which is the left. On the other, you've got religion and the family, which is the right. And those two things are going to come together. They have woven the tapestry of politics such that they have split these two things apart from each other, and they've made them so radicalized that it forces people into the synthesis of Catholic social teaching. Think about it. Politics has never been as completely divided as it has been in the last 10, 20 years. Like, on purpose, they have pushed the left so hardcore towards social justice at the cost of objective morality and religion and the family. And they've pushed the right so hardcore towards conservative situations that have been completely corrupted by religious fanaticism at the cost of social justice, economic justice, helping the middle class. Like, these are valid things. So what do you think is the solution? Again, you don't need a crystal ball, folks. You just need to add 1 + 1. The solution is a system that will provide social justice, economic justice to help the middle class, while simultaneously having religion, caring for the family, God, etc., prayer, etc., conservative values, nationalism. How does that look? Well, the only box that contains all those things is Catholic social teaching. That's why people like her are going to be in the same group with other people who normally she would be completely against politically. Do you get it? But they're all going to come around and they're going to find their synthesis in this middle road. Everybody can agree on basic social justice and human dignity. Everybody can agree that people's lives shouldn't be thrown under the bus by greedy oligarchs that are so greedy for gain that they replace tens of thousands of workers with AI or robots. Everybody can agree that the middle class needs to be strong for an economy and for a nation to be strong. Everybody can agree that the family needs to be protected because there needs to be some family values, otherwise your culture collapses, your society collapses. Everybody can agree that you need to have some moral fiber and religion in some degree, right? Like some theological connection to God. Otherwise, if you're just a completely atheistic culture, then that's also not good. So all of these things are going to come together, and you're going to see that I chose this girl out as an example of just how easy it's going to be. Just how easy it's going to be.
Catholic Church has its own models. They're purely private local models.
Mm-hmm. And I've got a little, it's not a GGX, but I've got an Acer Veritron, which is using the Blackwell chip.
Oh, nice.
So it's got a petaflop worth of performance, 4 terabytes of storage,
you win,
128 gigabytes of memory. So it's pretty good.
Wow. Now, and are you running the Vatican's models on that?
We have developed our own model, completely private, and which means that we can use them in what we call internal forum cases. So when it's information that's very sensitive, we have the ability to summarize, to translate, to otherwise transform that information without it ever touching the internet.
When you trained it, what was the content you trained it on?
So we have several hundred years worth of texts that are specific to the Catholic Church. All digital. So everything has been digitized in our archives. And so we were able to run that and say this, it learned our language, it learned our culture, it learned
Does this
our
speak
way of
Latin?
doing things.
Does it speak Latin? That was my question.
It does speak Latin, actually, yes. That's one of the very first things that we had to train it to do. We had to train it to help translate some of the other sources. And so it's a completely closed model. It does not use any information from outside of the Catholic Church. And our model has no problem saying, I cannot answer that.
So the Magnificat Humanitas is all about regulating AI, and yet the Catholic Church is all over AI. Isn't that interesting? This is from CatholicConnect.in. Vatican Commission on AI holds inaugural meeting. June 29th, 2026, the Interdicasterial Commission on Artificial Intelligence recently convened its first meeting, officially initiating the work of the newly established body created to encourage coordination and collaboration among the various institutions of the Holy See involved in the study, reflection, and application of artificial intelligence. The meeting took place at Palazzo San Callisto and included representatives from the dicasteries for the doctrine of faith, for culture and education, for communication, and for promoting integral human development, along with delegates from the Pontifical Academies for Life, of Sciences, and Social Sciences. The gathering aimed to exchange information on ongoing initiatives, identify shared priorities, and outline the initial stages of a process intended to promote a vision of artificial intelligence that supports human dignity, the common good, and the mission of the Church. Boy, if that doesn't scream to you Revelation 13, I don't know what does, really. The Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development has been assigned the responsibility of coordinating the commission during its first year. In his introductory address, Cardinal Michael Zerny, S.J., that means Jesuit, prefect of the dicastery, pointed to 4 especially important dimensions of the present development of artificial intelligence: the unprecedented speed of its advancement, its effects on human dignity, the increasing dialogue between the Church and the technology sector, and the significant response generated by the encyclical Magnificat Humanitas. Special emphasis was placed on the importance of prudent discernment in responding to a phenomenon that presents considerable opportunities while simultaneously bringing increasingly serious ethical, social, cultural, and environmental risks and challenges. The participating institutions outlined their initiatives and reflections concerning artificial intelligence, referring to studies and projects focused on the scientific, social, ethical, and educational implications of the technology. The meeting also revisited the journey begun through the Congress on AI Ethics and the Rome Call for AI Ethics, together with the Holy Father's message on relationships between artificial intelligence and peace for the World Day of Peace in 2024. Yeah, the RCC is all over artificial intelligence. And what does that tell you? That tells you that this is going to be reined in by the beast. So all that technocratic, dystopian nightmare narrative is just a distraction. These people like Peter Thiel and everybody else, Elon Musk, these are just puppets, man. They're billionaires, but they're puppets. The people who really pull the strings are going to make these people do what they're supposed to do. And they're going to be reined in. They're going to be reined in. So that's what matters, is knowing who is doing the reining in.
Peter Thiel spent 40 years building a personal friendship with a priest. At Stanford in the 1980s, Father Arne Panula, who ran Opus Dei's recruiting center on campus, befriended a young Thiel. They stayed close for life. Through Panula, Thiel found the ideological permission for everything that followed, a belief that some men are simply meant to rule. For 30 years, Thiel ran his own public pipeline, teaching Stanford's most famous startup course, founding a campus newspaper that built a network worth billions, and paying young founders to skip college and build under his mentorship. A generation of Silicon Valley's most powerful people came up through rooms where Thiel was the one speaking. Here's the contradiction. Curtis Yarvin, Thiel's own house political philosopher, calls universities part of the cathedral, the institution he says must be torn down to save democracy from itself. They don't actually think universities are dangerous. They think universities are dangerous when they teach democracy and useful when they recruit the next generation of believers. Leonard Leo spent that same 40 years building something else entirely.
Who, by the way, Leonard Leo owes Opus Dei. He's a Knight of Malta, connected to all this stuff. Robert P. George. They're all one peas in a pod, man.
In 1986, he founded a Federalist Society chapter at Cornell. By 1991, he was in Washington full-time. He didn't have personal wealth, but he was the ultimate matchmaker. He built a system of front groups operating under fictitious names that didn't just move judges, it moved money. By funneling tens of millions of tax-exempt dollars into his own private firms, he turned the judiciary into an asset and his network into a personal bank. Then a reclusive billionaire handed him $1.6 billion, the largest political advocacy donation in American history. 2 different missions, 2 different methods, and they both intersected at the same building 2 blocks from the White House, the Catholic Information Center, the Opus Dei headquarters Panula directed for a decade. Leonard Leo sat on the board of that very institution Panula built. In 2022, that institution gave him its highest honor. One man got the ideology from a priest. The other got the institutional home that priest built. Now look at where both tracks ended up. Thiel's network gave us Curtis Yarvin's blueprint and the political vessel to carry it. Leo's network gave us a Supreme Court that gutted the agencies that could have regulated AI. Different paths, same outcome. A country where the people who control the most powerful technology in history answer to no one. A government where the people have no say, no vote, no choice. In the next part, we show you what they're planning for the rest of us once they get there. Follow.
Yeah, and the problem is that this is good analysis, but the next level to this is to connect the dots that all of these are puppets of the beast. Peter Thiel is a Catholic. He's connected to Opus Dei, Catholic hardcore institution. Leonard Leo, Catholic, Knights of Malta member. All of the Robert P. George, Knight of Malta member. All of these people are ultimately agents of the beast, and they're shaping culture through movements, leapfrog organizations, NGOs, shell companies, shell corporations, all kinds of shenanigans. People are so committed to what they're doing, and nobody seems to notice. Everybody is focused so much on the obvious boogeymen of Islam and Jews and trannies and LGBTQ that they don't see all of this concerted effort to take over this country and to finally make it a vassal state for Rome. This is from The Guardian, and it's from, where's it from? What time? July 2nd. OpenAI in early talks to give 5% stake to the U.S. government. CEO Sam Altman argued move would share benefits of AI, and it would involve other firms doing similar, report says. This is a developing story. OpenAI is reportedly in early stages talks to give a 5% stake in ChatGPT developer to the U.S. government as artificial intelligence companies attempt to smooth relations with Donald Trump's administration. The OpenAI chief executive Sam Altman has argued that giving the U.S. public a financial stake in the company is the best way to share the benefits of AI, according to the Financial Times, which cited two unnamed people familiar with the discussions. The proposal would also involve the other U.S. AI companies giving a similar stake to the government, the FT reported, although it is not clear yet which companies such as Anthropic, Google, and Meta would agree to the plan. Such a deal would help improve the industry's relations with the Trump administration, and it could help garner political support by sharing wealth generated by the AI boom with the public. The proposal comes amid growing pressure from Washington on U.S. AI companies. Last month, Anthropic suspended its newest model after the government ordered it to curtail access for foreign nationals on national security grounds. This week, it said it had restored customer access to the model after resolving the government's safety concerns. Altman and other OpenAI bosses have suggested that each of the biggest AI developers in the U.S. should give 5% to their equity to an investment vehicle such as the Alaska Permanent Fund, a sovereign fund that invests U.S. oil wealth stocks into and pays dividends to the state. The talks are conceptual and in early stages, it's said, and any deal could require an act of Congress to implement. Both OpenAI and Anthropic have previously suggested in policy papers that a public or sovereign wealth fund may be required in the future to distribute shares to the public. Yeah, right. Just like your Doge checks. In April, OpenAI said that a public wealth fund could provide every citizen, including those not invested in financial markets, with a stake in AI-driven economic growth. OpenAI and Anthropic are preparing to list on the U.S. stock market in moves that some investors believe could value both companies at more than $1 trillion. 751 billion pounds, $1 trillion. Yeah, we'll see. It's probably not going to happen, but this is a very interesting situation and needs to be watched, because what I anticipate with this, again, who knows how it's all going to go down, but right now what is for sure certain is that there is a massive bubble. There's a massive AI bubble because of circular financing, because of over-leveraged investment and stock leveraging and shadow banking and hype and all kinds of the usual shenanigans that have been going on since the dawn of time, right? And it's going to pop. At some point, it's going to pop. Whether it's going to pop, especially now with all the Trump stuff in Iran, at least at the time of this video, basically falling apart, we're probably headed towards a pretty powerful financial disaster at some point. And all of this, what it signals to me with this little 5% deal, this is a hint of what's to come, which is, think about it this way. All of these companies are integral to the image of the beast and to the New World Order scheme, and their technology has to continue. But they've been so over-leveraged and everything is so overpriced that it's going to collapse. And when it does, who do you think is going to bail them out? Well, you and I are going to bail them out. The taxpayer is going to bail them out, just like they did before. The government's going to print money. The government is going to buy these companies up, nationalize them, and set the stage for who knows what going forward, with all of these things being basically regulated by the powers that be. So this is something to watch. It'll be interesting to see what happens, because it has to go somewhere. These companies have not given anywhere near a profit close to what they spend every year. And you can only do that for so long before the jig is up. And I think the jig is going to be up pretty soon. And it's going to be a perfect opportunity for the Magnificat Humanitas to be the standard to regulate all these companies. If they do get nationalized, if they do get bailed out, whatever is going to happen, they will owe one to the government. They will owe one to the state. And then pretty soon, once the state becomes completely Catholicized, well, then you can do the math and see what happens with that. So anytime after 2028, you can really see how these things are all coming together, with the financial collapse, with the collapse of the political spectrum and the reinvention of that, with some narrow road direction, with the fact that there'll probably be a Catholic president, with the fact that you're going to have Catholicized culture in every direction. All of these are adding up to the same trajectory. Do you see the direction? Hopefully that's becoming very clear. Now, here's a statement from Pope Leo XIV. It says, you don't have to be afraid to get married and start a family. Now, look, I've said this many times, and some people disagree with me. I personally, this is not a command from God or the Bible, but I personally would not have a family. I think it's okay to get married, but I would not have a family. I just wouldn't. If you feel called to do that, then that's between you and God. My personal feeling, and if I were to give my opinion and recommendation as my own personal opinion and recommendation, I would say don't have a family, don't have children. And when the man of sin, who seeks to be worshipped and who uses good for evil, tells you, don't be afraid to get married and have a family. Go and do it. That should wake you up. Because if that's the case, then something's going on here. Why is he so for the family? Of course, that's always been Catholic position, but why is it Catholic position? Why is the Catholic position for the family? Because the man of sin actually cares about your family when he himself doesn't have a family, doesn't have children, doesn't have a wife. He cares about you having a wife and kids and all that. Or is there a very surreptitious evil reason masked by all the good intentions? And I've said that before, but the real reason why the beast is always about the family is because the family unit is easy to control. When you have children running around, little baby kids, you're much more likely to do what you're told because you don't want your kids to suffer, do you? You don't want your kids to go hungry. You don't want your kids, God forbid, to lose their parents. So of course you're going to do what you're told. That's why the beast is about the family. Because they understand that families, especially little children, put people in situations where they are more likely to compromise. And compromise has been the name of the game since the very beginning, my friends. And compromise is going to be the name of the game at the very end, because people are going to worship the wrong things and marvel after the wrong things. So
you might have recently seen clips going viral from Turning Point USA's...
Now, connect this to what you just saw with the quote from the Pope. You don't have to be afraid to have a family to get married. Now, cue the propaganda in culture to shape that situation and bring people under the beast's agenda.
Women's Leadership Summit in San Antonio, where women were asked on camera if they'd give up their right to vote and let their husbands vote for them instead. One woman said, quote, "My husband and I are one flesh. I would be okay giving up my right to vote because I know he would represent me well." Another woman said she'd even be fine with her daughter losing the right to vote. The keynote who started that conversation is Savannah Faith Stone, a 20-year-old influencer who openly opposes women's suffrage and independence while running a paid community teaching women's submission. While generations of feminists that she now condemns fought for her right to run a business of her own, the hypocrisy doesn't seem to stop her message from resonating with a huge audience of women. And before you call this fringe, thousands of women attended this conference, mostly college students. This is a recruitment event, and it worked exactly as designed. Researchers at King College London found that the tradwife movement isn't organic. It was a deliberate effort to use social media to make conservative gender ideology look like a path to a happy, fulfilling life. The tradwife was created and funded by political strategists to give their ideology a positive face. A 2025 University of Hawaii study found that instead of identifying the structural failures that make modern life hard for women, like the lack of paid maternity leave, comprehensive women's healthcare, or affordable childcare, these communities blame feminism for women's problems. They identify real pain and exploit it for political gain. If you're wondering why the right seems to be doubling down on tradwives right now, it's not a coincidence. Research on far-right populism shows that misogyny always accelerates after economic crises, like the affordability crisis we're in right now. When people are anxious and exhausted, movements that promise a return to nostalgic times gain ground. Attacking gender equality isn't a side effect of that playbook. It's a core feature. The tradwife trend is also an omen for the rise of authoritarianism. Researchers at Carnegie Endowment documented how democratic erosion moves in lockstep with attacks on reproductive rights and the push for traditionalist gender norms. These aren't separate movements. They're the same trend, and suffrage is the next target. So let's be clear. The women at that conference are not the enemy. They are the product of a decades-long, well-funded, algorithmically amplified campaign to make patriarchy feel like liberation. The question is, do we simply condemn and ostracize them, or do we invest the time and resources necessary to convince them, and more importantly, convince other young women that their right to vote is worth fighting for?
Nothing new under the sun. When all the bankers teamed up together in the 50s and 60s, and they propped up people like Audrey Hepburn and all these other, Marilyn Monroe, and shaped the feminist movement and liberated women so they could go out in the workforce and reproductive rights and whatever other things that came out of feminism. And now what are they doing? They're teaming up the same thing. All the people who have something to make out of this situation are using the chaos from feminism to push people back in the opposite direction with Feminism 2.0, which is trad wife. This is the trad wife movement. Be a trad wife, which of course it's so hypocritical, like she pointed out very well, that the fact that you even have a platform to speak about this was because, now I'm not a feminist, please don't think that I support feminism, but I do support equal speech and free speech for everybody. Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. And the fact that let's put it this way, this Savannah Faithstone, who I don't even think that's her real name, but let's just say that's her real name. The ideology that she believes and she preaches would not have allowed her to ever garner such a successful platform in the first place and promote any sort of ideas contrary to the culture. So go with that, because that is such a hypocritical situation.
Noticing a trend with these liars and frauds.
Have more babies than you can afford.
If you're not encouraging your children to grow up and have the courage to get married and have kids, more kids than they can afford before they think they're ready, it is high time to start.
The way that policies are structured to weaken and diminish women and their health. So whether that's through birth control and the ability that all of these companies and policies have had to convince women that their biological reality of ovulation doesn't matter and that you can shut that off and that you can take control of that. Well, God created that. That's not yours to take control of.
So you combine the fear-mongering about birth control with the demand to have children before you can afford to and before you're ready, and you start to wonder about many things. Most notably, why all of these women are giving advice that they themselves rejected. Erica Kirk is almost 40 years old. She was 33 when she had her first child. She'd already had a career in New York City, gained financial stability. Now she tours the country speaking and lining her pockets, continuing her career to ensure that she and her children will always be financially empowered with choice. Isabel Brown had her first child in her later 20s after getting both a bachelor's and a master's degree, and now has a lucrative career in political activism. Kate Johnson is a nurse. All three women delayed their own reproduction, built careers, obtained degrees, and attained financial stability. But now they turn around and tell women to do the thing that they all refuse to choose for themselves because they know the cost of making that choice. While at the very same time, Republicans are decimating our social safety net, gutting funding for SNAP and WIC, where Republicans want to slash monthly fruit and vegetable benefits for breastfeeding mothers from $52 to $13, pregnant mothers from $47 to $13, and children under 5 from $26 to $10 a month for fruits and vegetables. Have these people ever stepped foot in a store? 776,000 children are no longer receiving food assistance as a direct result of Donald Trump's policy choices to gut SNAP. And we aren't even talking about the attacks on Medicaid or the racist echoes in all of this, because while they're telling certain women to have kids, they support an administration enacting an ethnic cleansing across the country that they call mass deportation, an administration filled with white supremacists who are consumed by fear-mongering about the white birth rate. So next time you hear this advice from wealthy women who delayed their own reproduction to ensure that they would have the freedom to travel the world, mic in hand, streams of cash flowing in, ask yourselves why they're so intent on taking your choice, why a life of poverty is acceptable for you, but not for them.
Feminism 2.0, folks, nothing new under the sun. This is just an engineered movement to get people to into situations. It's just so evil. This is the thing that's so evil about it. To get people into these compromised situations where they are having families and they need to provide for their families, so they are so desperate for solutions that they will accept the solution when it comes. That's why, like I said, in my opinion, have one less thing that you can be manipulated by. Because if you have children, it's a very difficult road ahead. This is a cartoon. It's got this Mike Johnson at this grocery store. He's like, sorry, we can't afford handouts to this poor woman with her child. She's like got her SNAP benefits. She's trying to get oatmeal and milk. He's like, sorry, we can't afford handouts. And then the next picture is like, he's giving him this, little file with insider trading, and there's Rick Scott and all these, politicians laughing with their money bags. And the guy's like, thank God it's impossible surviving on just $174,000 a year. But you see, this is the problem. And who, by the way, Mike Johnson is Catholic or Protestant? He's Protestant. Do you get it? This is the problem. Protestants don't care about the starving mothers in the family. They don't care about the family. The Catholics are the ones who care, because Catholic social teaching has always been about the family, and we care about the family. So we need a solution to this injustice. We need a solution. We need a new way of doing things. We don't need this Protestant here who's so wrapped up in his corporate greed and Judaizing eschatology. We need somebody who cares for the people. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And the more people have babies, the more voters and people are going to basically want that solution, because you're going to be hungry. And again, that's how the devil uses good things like family and children for great evil, But nevertheless, God will use it for the good. So if you have little children, then it's nothing to be depressed about. Obviously, having a child is a joy. But again, if you have the option, in my personal opinion, I wouldn't have children. Anyway, this is from the Hal Turner radio show. The title says, JP Morgan Commodities Research issues latest oil reserves info catastrophe. Of course, this is just really, really bad because of this whole Iran conflict situation. The latest global oil reserves report is out from JP Morgan Commodities Research, and the numbers are nothing short of catastrophic. As seen on the chart below, as of June 2026, global oil reserves are down to about 7.7 billion barrels. The chart makes clear the planet will drop to 7.4 billion barrels by July. So here's the chart, and JPM is the yellow line here. The estimate is the maroon line going down like this. And that's in 2026 compared to other years. So when the world drops to 6.8 billion barrels, it's over. No more refining will be possible because we will hit the tank bottom. You see, the remaining 6.8 billion barrels are the bottom of the tanks. They can't refine the oil below that because it's so contaminated with dirt, rocks, and sludge. And paraffin wax, the stuff that they make candles out of, the bottom of the tanks is useless. Even attempting to pump below that number would clog pipes, clog filters, and ruin pumps. Moreover, the physical weight of the remaining oil in the tanks is insufficient to push the oil into pipelines, so refinery pumps can then push it into the refinery process. Oil is much thicker and heavier than water. Pumps cannot pull it. The oil has to be pushed into pumps, which can then push it into the refining process. So at 6.8 billion barrels, the refineries shut down. None of us know exactly the date that will occur, but with the trend being as solid as it is, most rational people will agree we are maybe 8 weeks away from the tank bottom. That means no more fuel refining. So, that 8 weeks away, that's early September. We'll see what happens by then. But most regions of the country have an inventory of gasoline and diesel already refined and stored. In the Northeast U.S., we have 45 days. So once the refining stops, those reserves are all that we have left. And the reserves vary by U.S. region. By the way, the New York City region has the largest reserve, so all the other regions have less time. As regional reserves run out, diesel runs out first. Without diesel fuel, all the trucks and freight trains stop. They all run on diesel. There are no electric freight trains in the United States. No trucks to pick up food from farms or ranches and bring it to processing centers. No trucks to bring it from processing centers to distribution centers. No trucks to bring it from distribution centers to supermarkets or stores. Hence, no food on store shelves. Now, many of you are probably thinking we have the Strategic Petroleum Reserve that is already counted in the JP Morgan chart. Others of you may be scoffing that we pump more oil than anyone else in the world. Yes, we do. But what we pump is light, sweet crude oil known as West Texas Intermediate. When our country was younger and we built our refineries, we were pumping a different type of oil from our land, heavy sour crude. So when we built our refineries, we built them to refine heavy sour crude oil. Their ability to refine light sweet is almost nothing. That's why we export so much oil. We can't refine it. That may sound outright dumb, and it is, and there's a reason we can't refine it. For decades, the oil industry here in the United States wanted to build new refineries to be able to refine the light sweet crude oil, but they couldn't. Want to know why? The environmentalists and the NIMBY, not in my backyard, whiners. They whined and moaned, screeched and cried about the environment. When their temper tantrums didn't work, they sued and sued and sued some more. They made it so tough to even try to get a new refinery built, the oil industry just gave up. So as you sit with no gasoline and no food, you can thank the environmentalists, their attorneys, and the nitwit judges who sided with them. Now, really quick pause. Who started the environmentalist movement? Do you know? Well, it was a very concerted and intentional effort to ultimately bring the nations under the beast, which is what's happening now as of Laudato Si by Pope Francis, that reined in the environmentalist movement. But before that, it was secular, but nevertheless, it was started and moved along by Jesuits, by NASA and all its shenanigans, promoting the moon landing, and here's our great marble earth and this vast void that we need to take care of. All of that was designed, the Club of Rome publishing its Limits to Growth paper for overpopulation. All of this is Roman full and full. Even though it was a secular movement, which appeared secular, it really had its origins in Rome. And then now it's back openly connected to Rome through Laudato Si and taking care of the environment. So who started the environmentalist movement? That's the important part to remember. It wasn't just a bunch of hippies, which brings me back to the warnings I've been telling you for months now. Buy food, get shelf-stable food that you don't have to refrigerate, rice, beans, pasta, canned meats, canned vegetables, and the like. If you've got a freezer space, presuming the electric remains on as power plants run out of fuel, fill up your freezers ASAP. Oh, and what will you do if the electric goes out? Got a generator? Got spare fuel for it, so at least you can power your refrigerator freezer a couple hours a day to prevent your food from spoiling. Look, I know a lot of you yourselves think it can't possibly get that bad. Yes, it can. Yeah, it can. It can if you're able to prepare some things, that's important to not be caught with your pants down. At the same time, God is going to provide one way or another. So let's just see what happens. But the truth is they do need a crisis. They do need a crisis in order to bring in this new reality. They need a crisis. And that crisis is going to do many things. It's going to introduce the new financial system. It's going to completely discredit the Protestants in America and set the stage for a synthesis politically. It's going to restructure the world and take America out of the world as a globalist power, as the policeman of the world, and allow for a more cooperative system where America can then can be emulated and can deceive the nations through, prosperity and other things. So it's going to do a lot of things. So they need this crisis. They need this big crisis. It's one big giant dark to light. This is from Jennifer. And she says, I'm not sure if you got this piece of news yet down in Arizona, but up in West Michigan, we have this annual EDM week-long festival that draws people from all over the country to the forest. It's called Electric Forest, and it's maybe 30 minutes north of us. So you have the Plur kids. Plur in the EDM crowd is peace, love, unity, and respect. So it's, just a hippie 2.0. You've got the Plur kids who are mostly into occult EDM type stuff, and the transgender, LGBTQ, and hippie druggy community all combined. Sounds about right. Usually people just complain about the drugs and shenanigans of a bunch of raver kids acting stupid in the forest. A few years ago, a guy went missing and they found him dead maybe a year or two ago. Then this year, they found a baby born alive and left to die in a porta potty pit. Placenta and all, and it's just rocked their whole world. Some trying to justify or defend the mother's actions, the other 75% just emotionally wrecked that after they found this baby who died, they never shut down the festival and they just danced. Shut it down later that night for a storm, but never for the crime scene that was made, which is very strange. A day or two later, they found a young man hung himself in the woods. So I'm just watching the conversations of these young people who are so horrified. This will be a huge catalyst for many of them to turn away from this EDM lifestyle. Now they say they found the woman who left her baby. She's a local who lives not far from the festival grounds. This has not been released publicly yet, but the internet sleuths are all over it. And they share this girl's Facebook page. And of course, what do they see on her profile picture? Well, what do they see? Let's find out. Oh, there it is. Big fat Freemason hat. Isn't that interesting? There's Terrea Scott. So this is the woman involved in that situation. And she's got a little Facebook profile page with a square and compass on her head. PSYOP. These are all PSYOPs, folks. And not that that didn't happen, but these things are designed. The old way of doing things is going to collapse. Hookup culture is collapsing with Tinder and Bumble and all these dating apps. People are getting burned out. They want substance. EDM is going to collapse because it's full of all kinds of abuses and craziness. If you've been in that lifestyle, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a wild, wild west. And that is not sustainable, and that's by design. And so these things are going to be absorbed into the coming Christian New Age situation. I mean, you've already got the Catholic Church all over, like the EDM crowd with their own EDM festivals that are more godly, quote unquote, with priests being DJs in Europe and stuff. I mean, this is the future, and of course, it's all behind the scenes. All these people are little synagogue of Satan, duplicitous people that are saying one thing and doing another. Fox News brought on a rabbi today. He compared Gentiles to apes and Jews to humans. How is this allowed to air in a Christian nation? I can tell you exactly how it's allowed to air.
And I was coming into the studio, I was thinking, what can I compare this to? Do you remember the movie?
Oy vey, he sounds so much like a...
Planet of the Apes? The human people that came to the planet. All of a sudden, you're weird. You're the killer. You're the rotten person. Because they believed in all the evils that was unproven. To be a Jew today sometimes is like the humans that come to the planet of the apes and meeting people like him and like, where did you get this from? Why do you think this way? And it's almost impossible to talk to these people, to reason to these people, because hate is an emotion. It's not intellect.
תלמיד ישיבה הולך עם תספורת מעליות. זה תספורת של גוי, של יהודי? גוי. תספורת שוקו-וניל, זה יהודי או גוי? גוי. בלורית, זה תספורת של יהודי או גוי? גוי. מכנסיים, צמודים כמו נקניקיה מסלוסי. זה גוי או יהודי? זה גוי, שתי מקלות של מטאטא של סנוקר הולכות. אדם גנב! אדם גנב!
מה יש לך? למה את בוכה? אין לי מושג.
אוי, מה יש לך? גרביונים עם כוכבים. שמעתם? פעם כוכבים חשבתי רק בשמיים. הם ירדו לגרביונים. משקה חדש יצא. פסיפלורה משוגעת. ראשי תיבות פסיכי מטומטם. גימטריה אהבל. יש כאלה צועקים.
And of course, everybody is now watching this and getting a chance to comment on it and talk about it. And what does that do? That wakes people up to the Jewish issue. Wakes them up and says, what's going on? Why is this guy calling? Look, what do they say in the Talmud? Oh, and people in the comments say, oh, look, in the Talmud it says this. And, Gentiles are like apes and animals and whatever else. And of course, it does say those things in the Talmud because the Talmud is incredibly ethnocentric and satanic. Speaking of which, this is what they believe, that non-Jews are animals. And it's there, I've covered these things myself. And, people are just spamming this thread with all kinds of stuff. And what does this do, folks? What does this do? This is a sign. This is a sign of the things to come. This is not even the tip of the iceberg, because eventually all of this is going to be brought on your head if you choose to obey God's laws over man's laws. And you're going to be made fun of, and you're going to be called a Jew. You're going to be called a legalist. You're going to be called a demon or whatever else. Antichrist. If they did it in the medieval hundreds and they did it in the Reformation and they called people who kept the Sabbath Antichrists and Judaizers and they shut them out from Christ and heretics, do you think they're not going to do it again? I mean, they've done it for thousands of years. Tucker Carlson says he is going to help build a third party. You don't say. The same Tucker Carlson that wore a red Kabbalah bracelet for years, whose dad is related to the CIA operative, or was a CIA operative. That same Tucker Carlson, who's Episcopalian, who's quote-unquote Episcopalian, which is basically just a Catholic light, Catholic diet, Catholic version. That same Tucker Carlson is going to build a third American political party? Do you sense the synthesis coming on the horizon? I do. No Democrats, no Republicans. We want something in the middle that's more reasonable, that's going to have social justice, that's also going to have conservative ideals and nationalism. Got to have both, otherwise it doesn't work. Oh boy. Stupid Facebook. All right. This is from Advent Messenger on Facebook. Pope Leo XIV calls for the creation of a new global economic order to promote the common good. Now, again, every time they do this, they're signaling to you what's going to happen. So if he's calling for a new global economic order, that means the crash is coming pretty soon and there's going to be a new order coming. On June 16th, 2026, Pope Leo XIV delivered a video message to the Austrian World Summit, an international conference on sustainability and climate change held in Vienna. In his address, the pontiff advocated for a just transition toward a global economic model geared toward the common good and urged religious, political, and community leaders to collaborate in addressing the world's pressing challenges. He also linked the current environmental, economic, and social crises to the solutions outlined in his encyclical Magnificat Humanitas, presenting his principles as the answer to creating greater solidarity, sustainability, and international cooperations. Of course, you can look, you guys, you can either have the Tower of Babel. You don't want that dark world order with Klaus Schwab and Yuval Noah Harari, the Antichrist Jew. You want to build the city which man and God dwell together. And let me show you how to do that, which of course is completely Antichrist. The Tower of Babel is Antichrist in the sense that it is openly against Christ. What is the solution presented to you? In place of Christ. It is the solution of, we can build the kingdom with God. But is that what the Bible tells you? That man builds the kingdom with God? Are you kidding me? No. Jesus comes and destroys this thing because you can do nothing against it. Only he has the power to do that. He comes and destroys this thing, and he builds the kingdom that you dwell in, so that every time you look at the kingdom, you go, wow, God is so powerful. But if you built the kingdom and God is waiting on you to do something, God doesn't get any glory for that. If you're the one who kicks the devil out and defeats the devil through voting and working together for the common good, then what is the point of the devil? What is the point of having a villain in the story? The point of the villain is so that the hero can rescue you from the villain. From the dragon. The damsel in distress, that's the church. Jesus is the knight in the shining armor, and Satan is the dragon. That's the original love story. So Jesus comes and rescues you from the dragon and builds the castle. He does it all because he's sovereign. In the Antichrist's version of salvation, you do it with God because that is an in place of Christ situation. And again, you see the two-pronged attack, the Antichrist and the openly against Christ and the in place of Christ being offered to you. This is a comment from YouTube from somebody says their name is No King But Christ 83. Tudor, as you probably know, some members of Keir Starmer's Labour Party want him out. One of the most popular among the party is Andy Burnham, Burnham, who some call King of the North. If Andy is able to win an upcoming local election, he will become a member of parliament and contest to become Labour leader and then prime minister. That would make him the first openly Catholic prime minister. Boris Johnson was the first Catholic prime minister, but he entered parliament as an Anglican. Now he is probably a lukewarm Catholic, seeing he is on the left side of the politics, but as I saw this interesting quote of his, Catholic social teaching underpins my politics. So this guy, Andy Burnham, says, Catholic social teaching underpins my politics. A Catholic on the right who actually makes real good points, Frank Wright, is also pushing Catholic social teaching and is looking like he's becoming one of the biggest voices on the right side here in the United Kingdom. Yeah, it's the same thing all over the place. Whether it's on the right or the left, you're looking at the same hydra with two heads, and they're both talking about the same thing. So it's the illusion of duality, but it's not. There's no such duality. This is from MSN. It says, Andy Burnham's religion, the teachings that underpin his politics. let's see, where does it say? He told Huffington Post in 2015 that his children went to Catholic school, and that he believed in values and the grounding it gives you. I'm a very big believer in that. He said, Catholic social teaching underpins my politics. We did have to read the Catechism at school, but it is powerful, strong, and right. The Catholic Catechism, which blasphemes Christ, is right, according to this man. So this is the future. And of course, England is ripe for a change. Are you kidding me? England is ripe for a social solution because they've been so overcrowded with, like poor quality immigrants, New World Order schemes, liberal politics. The left stuff, the atheistic left stuff has really given England quite a run for its money. And so you are begging for a transformation there, a transformation back to some sensible, practical policies for the people, a little bit of religion back. All that stuff is going to come back. And that rebirth is going to suck a lot of people into this Catholic social teaching reality.
I'm going to predict the future again.
Pay attention, Goyim.
Clip it. When the Democrats take the House and gain oversight powers, and when they impeach not only Trump but other government personnel, and when they subpoena and depose all these current and former government officials, they're going to find corruption. They're going to find legitimate corruption. It's going to be tangible. It's going to be real. It's going to be aired wall to wall, 24/7. It's going to become a major distraction. It's going to be so bad it's even going to hurt Trump with his own supporters. His favorability and approval will fall to new lows. He will not be able to implement his agenda because the Democrats will threaten a shutdown with control of the House, and Trump will become the most unpopular president since Nixon. He may resign. I don't think that he will, but he might. And what this will do is it will hurt the Republican brand so badly that in 2028, there will be a power vacuum for outsiders to challenge. And by that, I mean the Republican Party will be such a failure, Republican brand so toxic, that nobody from inside of it will be able to win the nomination, or they'll have a very difficult time doing it. There will be an appetite among Republicans for someone that was not a part of this train wreck. They will say, Trump sucks, war with Iran, corruption, failure on all fronts. We need a different kind of Republican to come in. That's when we destroy the GOP. That's when you bring in somebody, because whoever is at the top of the ticket for the presidency and becomes the president formally becomes the new head of the party. That person can actually change the party at an institutional level. That's the playbook, and that's the only way it's going to work. That is the only way. The only way to have a hostile takeover is to weaken it first. Common sense. People think this is so complicated. It really isn't. In the midterms, Democrats get in power, and they will absolutely destroy the Republicans. It will diminish them, weaken them. It will lower their market cap. It will lower their price. That will make it easier for a hostile takeover. Common sense. We will come in when they are weak with a strong, charismatic, compelling faction that is not the majority, but is numerous and loud and disproportionately represented, and importantly has vision and energy. And we will be able to subsume the GOP. It's a long shot. Not going to be easy. That's the only way. And even if we don't do it in 28, then at least you pave the way for 2032. But that is the long-term objective. Once you realize the GOP is irredeemable, cannot be reformed, you realize it has to be destroyed. Trump tried to reform the GOP. The GOP assimilated him. Cannot be reformed. We tried it. We voted in 16.
Is he revealing the method, maybe? I think so. This is from Vatican News. New study examines growing interest in the Catholic faith. A new national study of more than 2,100 participants in the Order of Christian Initiation of Adults across 20 Catholic dioceses in the United States points to a growing interest in the Catholic faith, particularly among young adults seeking truth, meaning, and spiritual depth. Published on the 18th of June by the Archdiocese of Chicago in collaboration with 19 other dioceses, the survey examined the experiences of over 2,100 people who participated in the OCIA between February and May 2026. The dioceses involved reported record levels of participation in adult faith formation programs. The study found that those entering the church were motivated primarily by two broad factors: a personal search for goodness, truth, inner peace, and purpose, and an attraction to the Catholic Church's liturgy, teachings, 2,000-year tradition. So what were they attracted by? Well, or what was the factors in their decision? Well, the fact that they were traumatized by all this secular, godless stuff, and they have no guiding light in their life. And number two, that the Catholic Church, compared to everything else, seems very beautiful and ornate and, seductive with all of its traditions compared to all of the vacuous, empty, modernized world that we live in. So, in other words, they weren't attracted to the Catholic Church because they read the Bible, which is an objective source of truth, and the Bible testified glaringly of the truth of the Catholic Church. They didn't go there because it's true. They went there because they desired to be filled. And instead of loving the truth, they loved the counterfeit, which offers things that appear as truth and offers to fill their minds and their hearts. But of course, they're filled with deception. Among respondents, 28% said they had no prior religious affiliation before beginning their journey toward the Catholic faith. So more than a quarter, while others came from Protestant communities or were Catholics completing their sacramental initiation. Desire to grow in virtue. Researchers noted that spiritual motivations ranked far above political or social considerations. 77% of the participants cited a desire to grow in virtue. 76% sought a deeper understanding of truth, and 72% reported a search for greater inner peace. The study also highlighted the growing role of digital evangelization. Many respondents credited online resources such as prayer apps, podcasts, videos, and social media content for helping them explore Catholicism. Do you remember what we just covered this in the very beginning when we talked about Henry Holland, or is it Henrik? I forget his name now, dang it. Holland. I'll just call him Holland. Erling Haaland, whatever his name is, Viking Haaland. That guy, Messi, all these, football players, soccer players with their rosaries, with their stakes and their Catholic propaganda, people who are not believers, who are agnostics, but who love sports. They watch this and then they're feeling very empty in their lives, and this guy's praying the rosary and say, oh, maybe I'll go try that. And pretty soon they're being baptized and they're in the Catholic Church taking the Eucharist. And this is how it goes. That was an evangelization operation. The FIFA World Cup, just like the Olympics, is designed to create ecumenism, to bring Catholicism out into the world, and to bridge people together under the beast. That's what it's for. And all these people are propaganda agents, just like Father Mike Schmitz is a propaganda agent, just like all the Hollywood actors and stars are propaganda agents, just like NASA, like the guy, I'll forget his name now, but I covered him last time, where they went into space in April, and he's like, oh, I decided to be a Christian. I just saw the cross, and I just, like, come on, give me a break, dude. You got to be like a high-level Freemason to get it that high up in the air and be doing all these NASA stunts. And you lie through your teeth most of the time when you're filming stuff. So you're telling me now that we should believe you, that you suddenly believe in Jesus? Like, get out of here. I don't believe it for 1 minute. But all these people are propaganda agents, so that by the time all of these little things pop around you, here, there's a NASA thing there, there's a football game there, there's some superstar that converted to Catholicism there's somebody talking about Catholicism here. It seems like a completely grassroots, organic situation, when in fact, it's really just a very carefully maneuvered propaganda machine, and that's what it is. Here's another conversion. Famous South Korean actor and singer Cha Eun-woo becomes Catholic. He is Catholic now. Famous South Korean actor and singer has been baptized into the Catholic Church during his mandatory military service, according to the Korea Times, citing his agency Fantagio. The report said he received the sacrament in June. So, of course, what do you think this is going to do for Korea? This guy's this good-looking, actor and singer. Everybody looks up to him. And Korea is set for a major revival, especially they work their asses off, just like Japan. They work their butts off, and they're primed for a religious revival. They really are. Let's watch Tucker Carlson as he announces he will no longer support the GOP.
I would not support the Republican Party. There's no chance I would support the Republican Party. I'm not going to support the Democratic Party. I don't know what I'm going to do. But at this point...
Well, we know what you're going to do.
How could I or any American voter support a political party that's not loyal to the United States, that puts the interests of a foreign country above those of its own citizens? That's it's not possible to vote for people like that, and I'm not going to. And I think I voted Republican my entire life. I worked at Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. I've been a consistent defender for 35 years of the Republican Party. I mean, very consistent defender. But there's no defending this because it's immoral, and it's exactly the opposite of what a political party in a democracy is charged with doing, which is representing its own voters, its own citizens, its own nation, and they're not doing that. So no, I'm out. And if I'm out, then I think a lot of other people are out.
Yeah, and a lot of people will be out, and a lot of people will join this middle of the road situation, because it's not. You have to face the facts that what he's saying. If you just take this out of context and you just look at purely what he's saying, he's right. He's right, and that's why it has power over people's minds, because he's right. The two-party system is a joke. Like, not that they ever really cared, but it's just blatantly obvious now. Like the middle class is evaporated. There's no middle class anymore. We have the worst K-shaped economy that we've had in probably at any point in time in history in this country. The country that's supposed to be the most prosperous in the world has like the highest K-shaped economy. There's no social justice. I mean, it is really bad, and it's very obviously bad. So that's by design, because you need to make it obvious so that everybody can figure it out really easily and get to the middle, the pen in the middle where everybody needs to be for the final trick to work. This is from YouTube, a comment by Rachel MM9152. She says, "Hey Tudor, wanted to share a light bulb Fennec moment that I had at the other day after I watched a video about how foreigners that are visiting the U.S. for the World Cup have changed their thoughts and attitudes toward America. They now think we're cool, awesome, and not as stupid as or bad as they thought. They'll be more willing to accept any theology that comes from us. The World Cup is actually helping the U.S. fulfill its role as the false prophet." Yeah, and imagine what it's going to be like 2 years from now with the Olympics that are going to be in L.A. Just imagine. That'll be something to watch, like, really intently. Because by then, a lot of these things will be playing out, and that'll be an election year too. That's going to be a huge year. That's going to be a huge year with a lot of stuff going on. This is from Advent Messenger. Pope Leo calls on North American Jesuits to bring about systemic change in a culture that has removed God from society. Now, if that's not a rallying cry, a battle cry, a war cry, Jesuits, this is the final hour. Do your worst and get out in there. I don't know what it is. Pope Leo XIV is expressing great concern over how society is becoming more secular and how God has been removed from the public sphere and popular culture. This reflects what many Protestants in the United States are actively resisting through their stand against aggressive secularism. Now, the Pope, just really quick point, the Pope doesn't care that God has been removed because he makes a living off of removing God out of the picture, but the Pope cares that Catholicism is not dominant in people's minds as much as it should be in his mind. Here we see the Pope advancing similar Christian nationalist ideas to the heads of Jesuit colleges and universities in North America. Pope Leo also reminds the Jesuits of their historic mission to strengthen the bonds of loyalty and obedience that should exist with the papacy. This is precisely the kind of development the prophecy warns about. We have been told that wherever the Jesuits established a presence, there followed a revival of popery. That's a quote from the Great Controversy, unfortunately, but nevertheless. On June 25th, 2026, Pope Leo met at the Vatican with the presidents of the Jesuit colleges and universities in North America and gave the following remarks. "I am pleased to welcome all of you here this morning, presidents and representatives from the Jesuit colleges and University of North America, and I thank you for your presence. I trust that your visit to Rome and to the Vatican will serve to strengthen your bonds both to the successor of Peter as with the leadership of the Society of Jesus, which has been involved in the field of education for centuries. Indeed, our time has called an age of epochal change. Societies are becoming even more secularized, with many seeking to push any mention of God out of the public sphere and beyond popular culture. Your institutions are called not only to teach your students about the injustices faced by those on the margins of society, but also to be powerful channels in promoting systemic change through proposing new models rooted in solidarity and the common good. The studies that take place on your campuses, the friendships that naturally blossom there, and the opportunity for all your academic communities to encounter the thought and research of great scholars, both past and present, can bring a sense of hope and promise of what could change for the better. My dear friends, with these thoughts, I express gratitude for all you do in your important educational endeavors. With the help of the prayers of St. Ignatius of Loyola, may you continue the Jesuit tradition of forming those entrusted to your care to be men and women for others. Men for others, that was my high school slogan. Through Jesuit education and influence, Rome is working to shape the minds of leaders, both religious and political, who will influence every level of society. When Pope Leo XIV calls upon Jesuit institutions to promote systemic change rooted in solidarity and the common good, this is a call to restore Rome's influence in culture, politics, education, and public life. The same Jesuit order that history identifies as an instrument for reviving papal power is once again being called to help reshape society at a time when the world is searching for world peace and global unity. Bible prophecy reveals the papal system will rise again to exercise an influence over the nations. The Pope's message to the Jesuits, calling for education rooted in the Catholic principles of solidarity and the common good, is helping prepare the way for the restoration of Rome's authority over the consciences of all people. The world is being conditioned to welcome papal leadership, and the Jesuits are playing a central role in this transformation. Agreed, absolutely agreed, except for the great controversy that they cite after that, but definitely they are shaping culture like no other, and it is a very organized effort. You can see all these things we're touching on, from sports games to celebrity conversions to education to political shenanigans, financial collapse. Everything is designed to move towards this final situation, which, of course, the Bible warned you of.
I'm already seeing Christians calling for Sunday sacredness, Sunday worship. If you look over in Europe, there are many Sunday laws that are there, and people are punished if they keep their business open on Sunday. I was just reading this last week in Mexico. They just formed a law that if you make your employees work on Sunday, you have to pay them an extra 25% pay because you're making them work on Sunday, which, of course, employers are going to be like, well, that's not worth it. We'll just close on Sunday, which is exactly what they want them to do. And so we already see this huge push to legislate Sunday worship. And this is exactly what she predicted.
I think this guy's an Adventist. I'm not sure, because he says she. I'm guessing he's talking about Ellen White. But the Bible predicted this a long time ago. You don't need Ellen White for that. Nevertheless, you can see these things coming more and more to the forefront. Trump's final religious liberty report calls for bridging church and state and cites Lincoln's appeal for Sabbath observance. This is from Advent Messenger again. On June 26th, the White House Religious Liberty Commission released its final report offering recommendations to the Trump administration that supposedly seek to strengthen religious freedom in the United States. President Donald Trump received the report in the Oval Office as members of the commission urged him to provide guidance to federal agencies regarding the issues addressed in the document. Not surprisingly, the report recommends building bridges between church and state, funding churches with government money, promoting religious instruction in public schools, permitting religious displays on state and government property, opposing efforts to limit cooperation between church and state, calls for the elimination of the Johnson Amendment, which restricts partisan political activity by tax-exempt churches, promoting the common good, and cites Abraham Lincoln's call for Sabbath observance. These recommendations bring us closer to the very scenes portrayed in Revelation 13. The 224-page document titled Draft Report, published by the Religious Liberty Commission, includes the following statements. For much of our nation's history, religious expression was not viewed as a complication within military life, but as a core component of it. From the earliest days of the Continental Army, commanders incorporated faith into the structure of service. George Washington required attendance at divine service. Abraham Lincoln called for an orderly observance of the Sabbath. During World War II, General Patton ordered 250,000 weather prayer cards to be distributed before the Battle of the Bulge, and President Franklin Roosevelt led the nation in prayer as Allied forces landed on the beaches of Normandy. Yeah, and all these people like Roosevelt were just Freemasonic puppets. So does religious behavior mean Christianity? Does it mean a transformed heart? I mean, pretty simple question. No, it doesn't. In fact, the Bible actually gives you plenty of examples as to why it doesn't, because there's many false converts. And even people who do mighty works in Jesus' name, and they're going to be turned away because they're workers of lawlessness and wolves in sheep's clothing. So just because there's religious proclamations and religious activity doesn't mean that you're dealing with a transformed heart. That's very important. Education of their children, including the right to choose a religious education, permitting time for voluntary prayer and religious instruction at public schools, government displays with religious imagery, and the right of all Americans to freely exercise their faith without fear of the government censoring or retaliating on them. Americans must know their rights and stand with courage when those rights are challenged. To preserve this freedom, we must build bridges, not walls, between the city of God and the city of man. Notice, again, city of God coming from the Augustinian book, City of God, and also the recent encyclical, which is we can build either the Tower of Babel or the city of God, basically the city that God and man dwell together in. If we do so, we will pass on a free and prosperous nation to the next generation. Expand partnerships with faith-based institutions. The administration should expand partnerships with faith-based institutions by utilizing faith-welcoming language in notices of funding opportunities, training faith groups on grant application process, and directing grant reviewers to provide equal treatment to faith-based and secular groups. Guarantee faith-based institutions an equal opportunity to participate on an equal basis in funding opportunities without requiring them to renounce their religious identity. Issue guidance that religious discrimination in federal funding programs is unconstitutional. Support fruit partnerships for the common good. The Department of Homeland Security should raise awareness and increase the accessibility of security enhancements grants for houses of worship and nonprofit organizations at high risk of attack. Repeal the Johnson Amendment, which purports to give the government authority to regulate religious leaders' sermons and spiritual guidance to their communities. From the very beginning of American history, pastors have spoken freely about matters of faith, morals, and public life, providing spiritual enrichment to their congregations and seeking to further the common good in American culture. Why is a Religious Liberty Commission headed by Paula White, who is a Protestant, big air quotes, using a Catholic social teaching buzzword, which is the common good? Why do they use that so many times, I wonder? Maybe because she's not a Protestant. How's that? For generations, the tradition has been a defining feature of our national life. It should be noted that this draft report is intended to serve as a guide for federal agencies, including the Department of Justice. These are some of the recommendations made by the Commission, a body comprising federal and state political representatives, legal activists, and prominent Catholic and evangelical religious leaders, which is tasked with defining national policy on religious freedom. Composed of political and religious leaders, this White House Religious Freedom Commission works directly to advise the White House Office of Faith-Based Initiatives and the Department of Justice on U.S. policy matters. And this is just the beginning. These are just the teeth, starting to barely teeny-beady coming, little baby teeth coming out. Pretty soon that lamb is going to start looking more and more like a dragon. You kind of got some sharp teeth for a lamb. That's interesting. Oh, your hair is turning into scales. Uh-oh, what's going on here? This is a copy of that proclamation by Lincoln. Is that it? Let me see. Let's see. Sabbath. Yeah, domestic intelligence, Sabbath observance. The following general order has been issued respecting the observance of the Sabbath day in the Army and the Navy. Executive Mansion, Washington, November 16th, 1862. The President, Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, desires and enjoins the orderly observance of the Sabbath by the officers and men in the military and naval office. The importance for man and beast of the prescribed weekly rest, the sacred rights of Christian soldiers and sailors, of becoming deference to the best sentiments of the Christian people, and due regard for the divine will, demand that Sunday labor in the Army and Navy be reduced to the measure of strict necessity. Does this sound to you a lot like the proclamation by Constantine? So the Sabbath is being equated to Sunday by Abraham Lincoln, but the Sabbath is not Sunday, and there's a decree going out claiming to be the Sabbath that you must obey, and yet it's not the Sabbath. So what does that mean? Why is a government that looks like a lamb enforcing a law that the dragon created? And this is like 100 plus years ago, 150 years ago, long time ago. So this is going to be repeated pretty soon, folks. And those who keep scoffing and mocking that the Sabbath is legalism or the Sabbath has nothing to do with anything, you are in for a rude awakening, my friends. So you might as well start studying now watch my Sabbath series, watch my Lord's Day series for a lot of history, and understand where the direction of all of these things is going. Because the Sunday issue is going to unite everybody. It's going to be ecumenical. It's going to be for the family. It's going to be for the environment. It's going to be for the working class man to rest and, recover his sanity from all the oppressive, technocratic, bureaucratic work that he has to deal with and so on and so forth. Sunday is going to be the solution. It's going to be the solution that will manifest as the catch-all for every single problem that is going on right now. This is another interesting situation that needs to be monitored, which is the SSPX situation. SF Archdiocese to pay. Oh no, this is a different situation, but that's another one too to watch. But this is San Francisco Archdiocese to pay $395 million and write every survivor an apology letter. The Archdiocese of San Francisco has reached a settlement of $395 million with approximately 537 survivors who allege they were victims of child sexual abuse at the hands of SF clergy. The settlement includes requirements for the Archdiocese that survivors call a 14-point plan. A list of credibly accused offenders will be published on the Archdiocese website. Employees will undergo enhanced reference checks, and adult personnel will be prohibited from texting one-on-one with children. Additionally, Archbishop Salvatore Cordeleone will be required to write personal letters of apology to each survivor. Now imagine if they got them to do this, how bad it actually was. And how many people that were either didn't come forward out of shame or they died or whatever else. Imagine. Because the Catholic Church fights these things tooth and nail. And eventually, they have to give in a little bit, just like with these big pharma companies that have their VAERS fund. They have billions of dollars they've paid into it, to placate the people that have been totally ruined by their vaccines and products, just like everybody else. Or the banks, the JP Morgan and Bank of America and all these people that manipulate the markets. And then they get slapped a fine of like $900 million, which is an enormous amount. But of course, they profiteered billions of dollars. So it's like, oh, whatever. It's just a tax. It's a tax to the government. Then they launder the money anyway. So these are, if this is what's happened, imagine how much more has happened. But this is a reminder to you that it's not just the Jews, okay? When you look at all the perversions of the Talmud, everybody focuses on all, the rabbis sucking the blood from the baby penises and how perverted they are. Yeah, they are perverted. But what about the Catholic Church? Hello? How many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, children, have been abused by Catholicism in the last century alone? Never mind the fact that Catholicism has been around for a very long time. And we've only had the power to investigate these things like relatively recently. So we're assuming that they've been around since the beginning because as priests aren't allowed to marry and they're around children a lot, you do, one-on-one, what do you get? You get a bunch of perverts that want to, basically be around kids, and you probably have had millions, just to be a conservative guesstimate, probably millions of children. Millions of people have been abused by the Catholic Church over the course of its entire history. And it's probably maybe tens of millions, but let's just say millions. I think it's a pretty safe bet to say millions of people based on purely the fact that in the last 100 years, there's been a few million at least that have been abused. So this is what it is, folks. And people forget because they're so focused on the other boogeymen. Here's some ecumenical shenanigans. Pope says, this is from June, late June, Pope says he wants to reestablish full communion with Constantinople. The head of the Vatican confirmed his commitment to achieving full unity with the Patriarchate of Constantinople. Pope Leo XIV has said he intends to continue efforts to restore full visible communion with the Patriarchate of Constantinople. He made the statement on June 28th at the Vatican during a meeting with an official delegation of the F.E.N.N.E.C, which had arrived in Rome for the feast of the Holy Apostles Peter and Paul, Catholic World Report wrote. Addressing the delegation headed by Metropolitan Emmanuel of Chalcedon, the pontiff stressed that his goal is to persevere in the effort to reestablish full visible communion between our churches. He also said he was open to proposals from the Patriarchate of Constantinople on further developing the dialogue. Well, I'm sure some of those proposals would not be accepted. Like, hey, Pope, we'll be in communion with you, but, we get to be on top. That's never going to work. Pope Leo said that after centuries of disagreements and misunderstanding, genuine dialogue between the two churches became possible only thanks to the courageous and far-sighted steps taken by Pope Paul VI and ecumenical patriarch Athenagoras. That's right. There's a famous picture on my video, Why Orthodoxy is a Harlot Daughter of Mystery Babylon, of the fated event between Athenagoras and Paul VI, giving each other the warm brotherly embrace and the kiss of love and reuniting with each other. That's back in the 60s. The head of the Roman Catholic Church emphasized the witness of sincere closeness that Patriarch Bartholomew of Constantinople has always shown toward the Catholic Church, especially through his attendance at the funeral of Pope Francis and later at the inaugural Mass of the new Bishop of Rome. Is it possible that maybe Patriarch Bartholomew is not what the Orthodox think he is? Is it possible? The following day, representatives of the F.E.N.N.E attended a solemn Mass in St. Peter's Basilica. After the service, Pope Leo XIV and Metropolitan Emmanuel descended together to the tomb of the Apostle Peter, where they prayed jointly. The pontiff also expressed hope that all Christian denominations would prepare together for the year 2033. Now, I've talked about this before. 2031 is the actual 2000th anniversary of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. That'll also be a year full of major shenanigans, I'm sure, because it's also the 500th anniversary of the Virgin of Guadalupe satanic apparition in Mexico, among other things. But if we do make it past that year to 2033, which is the counterfeit year anniversary of the crucifixion, because everybody thinks that Jesus died and was crucified in 33 AD, but that's not true. He was crucified in 31 AD. He was born in 3 BC. He was crucified in 31 AD. And if you need help with that, watch my Daniel's 70 Weeks episode, or ask Fennec. But if we make it to 2033, what a momentous deception that's going to be. Imagine. Because most of the world doesn't know the correct timeline. So most of the world is going to be deceived by this anniversary, quote unquote anniversary, and it's going to be a major ecumenical point. Major. Hey, it's 2,000 years. Come on, we gotta be one. Let's all be one body of Christ. We all have the same God. I mean, can you see it? By 2033, Islam will probably be collapsed. The Jews will probably be well on their way to conversion, if not already. It's going to be a momentous time, and that's why I said I don't see the world lasting for 20 more years after that. I just don't. I could be wrong, but I just don't. May Saints Peter and Paul, St. Andrew, and the Holy Mother of God, who live eternally in the perfect communion of the saints, accompany and sustain us in our efforts in the service of the gospel. Thank you, the head of the Roman Catholic Church said. As the UOJ reported, the Pope earlier prayed with an Anglican bishopess and called Christians to unity. So Rome is spreading her legs for everybody left and right, and everybody gladly jumps in her bed. And what do you expect? This is the end. Now, this is a fun quote here. The papal church is not Christ-centered, but Pope-centered. Saint Nectarios of Aegina, this is some Orthodox saint. Absolute authority and infallibility have been concentrated in a mortal and sinful man. The Pope succumbed to the third and final temptation offered to the Lord in the wilderness. In order to establish his own supremacy, the Pope not only slanders the gospel, but also diminishes the Blessed Peter's apostolic dignity. For whereas Peter, like the other apostles, was ordained as a teacher of the whole world, the Pope confines him merely to Rome. If Peter were the head and the source of authority, how is it that Paul, who was not among the 12, withstood Peter to his face? How could he rebuke him, as he himself writes in his epistle to the Galatians, when Peter came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face? Yeah? See, the Orthodox know their Bible. If Peter were first, why was it not Peter, as the head of all, who rendered the decision at the Apostolic Council, but James? That's Acts 15. That's the Jerusalem Council. The apostles were universal teachers, all equal in dignity, and none was assigned a superior throne. It's true. I mean, what he's telling you is true. And I said on here, Orthodox every so often have some bangers. Too bad their destiny is with Rome, with all of the ecumenism going on. And of course, all the Ortho bros are like, we're never going to submit. Rome needs to submit. I'm like, you need to read the Bible. You read the Bible and see what it has to say about that. But it'll be interesting. You see, what's interesting about that is, I really wonder, because some of these Ortho bros are like so hardcore that they think Rome is the apostate, Some of them are very friendly with Rome, but others are like, we're not bowing down to Rome. They know their history about the conflicts between Rome and the East. And you wonder that even though they are so trapped in their traditions, that once this thing goes live, they will wake up purely for the fact that they hate Rome, and God will use that to get them out of deception, which is a phenomenal thought. Whereas right now, if you try to evangelize these people, they'd be too stubborn to listen to you. But once they see Rome actually taking over, they won't believe their eyes, and they won't submit because they don't believe in Rome. What a profound thought. That's a profound thought. This is from Advent Messenger. Pope Leo pushes the churches toward one faith, one voice, and one ecumenical body under Rome. On June 30th, Pope Leo XIV addressed representatives of ecumenical delegation at the Vatican during the celebration of the feast of St. Peter and Paul. In his speech, Pope Leo urged all Christian denominations worldwide to walk together to rediscover a common witness and to unite into a single faith. How is it possible to have a common witness when you deny Jesus Christ, when you deny the Christ of the Scriptures? He claims that this unity is essential for peace and for the very survival of the world. Furthermore, the Pope challenged the churches, arguing that their credibility depends on their joining the ecumenical movement. In other words, those who reject Rome's call for visible unity are portrayed as obstacles to peace, cooperation, and the common good. Pope Leo expressed the following during his meeting with the ecumenical delegation. I'm very pleased to meet you following our celebration yesterday of the solemnity of Saints Peter and Paul and the patron saints of the Church in Rome. May the journey towards the celebration of the second millennium of redemption in 2033 be undertaken together by all Christian denominations of the world, rediscovering the gift and the call to be witnesses to the risen one. This 2033 thing is really, really big. Like I said, if we make it that far, expect some major, major shenanigans by then. Major. Like we're talking one world, universal, lukewarm churchianity type of situation. In an age marked by wars and growing polarization as well as cultural social divisions, Christians, reconciled amongst themselves and united in their profession of the one faith, are called to be a credible sign of peace, making a decisive contribution to the efforts of all men and women of goodwill to build peace. Gosh, sounds so good. Moreover, in the current situation, it is not only the credibility of the Christian message that is at stake, but the very future of humanity. The need for greater cooperation amongst Christians in the face of today's challenges, which include peace and the proper use of new technologies and care for creation, stems from the gospel of Jesus Christ itself. This is how Rome seeks to pressure the hand of the churches, by presenting unity as the answer to the world's crises. But the danger is that once churches accept this reasoning, the plan is for them to begin setting aside their distinctive biblical convictions in order to speak with a single common voice. Note the word common, which is very important. Common. Not holy, but common. In this way, each church's unique calling is replaced by Rome's vision of peace and unity. Instead of standing firm on the truths of God's word, churches are pressured to unite around a shared creed, mission, and social agenda. That's right. The social agenda is the shield that they can get into people's minds. This is what I was talking about earlier, the SSPX. The Vatican has excommunicated 6 bishops involved in the illicit episcopal consecrations carried out by the Society of St. Pius X and urged all Catholics to refrain from participating in its liturgies and activities. This is a major scandal at the time of this recording. And what's interesting, first off, the church, if the Catholic Church wants to claim that it's the original church, well, the original church appointed its own bishops in their own diocese and their own areas. And so these people are trying to do what the original church was doing, and the Catholic Church excommunicated them. So there's that. Anyway, what can you expect? But what's interesting is this is really creating a very divisive situation. So it'll be interesting to see how this dialectic proceeds, because the radical traditionalists are frothing at the mouth against this Pope and against, all the Vatican II stuff. And I have heard talks of potentially a Vatican III on the eve or on the anniversary of the Lateran Pact signing from 1929, so 2029. So that would be appropriate to have some kind of synthesis between right and left, because these two sides have been fighting pretty hardcore since Vatican II. So this is an interesting situation. It'll be something to watch and to see how it's being used to bring the world under this system, because something has to happen. Something has to happen with these people. This is from EWTN News. Pope Leo XIV praises U.S. Eucharistic pilgrims, highlights country's strong Eucharistic heritage. Now, what did I tell you about American history revisionism? This is what Catholicism does. It backdates itself beyond its existence so that it can present a false history and a false narrative and say, oh no, I was there from the beginning. See, I was there from the beginning. The Pope addressed pilgrims at the close of the 2026 National Eucharistic Pilgrimage, which concluded in Philadelphia on July 5th. Pope Leo XIV on July 5th praised Eucharistic pilgrims in the U.S. for walking thousands of miles with Christ as part of a great legacy of faith amid the country's 250th anniversary celebrations. So these people are fanatical pilgrims doing pagan things, pilgrimaging from holy site to holy site with an idol to consecrate the nation to this delusion. The pilgrimage, which carried the theme One Nation Under God, began in St. Augustine, Florida in May and went as far as Portland, Maine, before turning south and finishing in Philadelphia. In a video message played at the concluding Mass at the Cathedral Basilica of St. Peter's and Paul, Pope Leo XIV, the first pope in Catholic Church history from the United States, said the pilgrimage, which traced a route through the original 13 colonies, rebelled against England in 1776, was particularly appropriate to commemorate the country's 250th anniversary of its founding. Was it appropriate considering that the original founding fathers hated the Catholics? Is it appropriate? Would the founding fathers have agreed with your Eucharistic procession in honor of America? I don't think so. The U.S., the Pope said, has been imbued with a sense of faith that recognizes God's sovereignty even before its formal establishment. The Pope cited a Mass of Thanksgiving held in 1583 in St. Augustine, Florida by Spanish explorers. Yeah, the same Spanish who murdered and killed and raped and pillaged a bunch of people, so there's that. This historical event, accompanied by many others, attests to the strong, though largely unknown Eucharistic heritage of the United States of America. The Pope said, this heritage, far from being forgotten, must continue to serve as a source of both renewal and unity. That history, the Pope told the pilgrims, has continued to bear fruit by leading new generations of American Catholics to Jesus Christ. He also cited examples of U.S. martyrs and U.S.-born saints, including St. Kateri Tekakwitha, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, and St. Catherine Drexel. The intense apostolic activity of these holy men and women, others like them, would not have been possible without the strength they drew daily from moments of silent prayer before the tabernacle. The Pope said the Eucharistic pilgrimage helps carry on this great legacy of faith. The Eucharist is an invaluable gift, he said, one that the Church in the U.S. will use to find strength to carry on her charitable service to the wider society. Leo urged pilgrims to place our lives under God's loving providence as you return to your homes. He also urged them to cultivate a strong Eucharistic life among your families, friends, and communities. After the U.S. pilgrimage began on Pentecost in St. Augustine, the site of the 1583 Thanksgiving Mass referenced by Pope Leo XIV, it worked its way up the eastern seaboard, stopping at multiple U.S. dioceses along various holy sites. The route drew thousands of pilgrims in locations including Williamsburg, Virginia, Baltimore, and Boston. On June 6th, the pilgrimage passed through the streets of Washington, D.C. Along the way, the pilgrimage gave recognition to uniquely American aspects of Catholicism, such as the Georgia martyrs, who are scheduled for beatification on October 31st. This is all just shenanigans designed, again, to associate Catholicism to Americanism. You have to pay attention going forward in the coming weeks and months on all of these little marketing schemes to associate Catholicism and patriotism. America, Catholic. America, Catholic. This is the constant subliminal messaging that's going to be bombarded to you over and over again by associating these two things. When in fact, anybody who knows their history knows that these two things are not like going together. America stands as a nation, first off, in rebellion to what the papacy desires, which is to control everybody and to subjugate it to its own power. America stands as a nation of freedom, of individual sovereignty, of individual conscience, freedom of conscience, which is in complete opposition to what the papacy desires, which is to subvert your conscience for its own worship and for its own aim. So there's nothing Catholic about America. America and Catholicism are in complete diametrical opposition to each other. America never had a pope. America was never under the authority of the Pope. America is a brand new nation in history. And it's an experiment. It's a failed experiment. But nevertheless, America, as it was in the beginning, was very much away from the Pope. And the Founding Fathers were very aware of the Jesuits and of the problems with popery and so on. And that, within 100 years, disappeared. In the last 100 or so years, even less, people have become completely deceived on who the real enemy is. Today, most people aren't aware of who the real enemy is because they don't know their history. But you have to pay attention to these shenanigans. More and more of this follows an American Pope, a constitutional honor, Leo XIV, to receive historic Liberty Medal. There he is, people marveling after the beast. The award recognizes Leo XIV's longstanding advocacy of religious liberty, freedom of conscience, and freedom of expression, principles that occupy a central place in American constitutional tradition through the First Amendment. Oh my gosh, America and the Pope all in the same sentence? Are you kidding me? How is this even possible? How is this even possible? Well, it's possible because it's by the power of the devil. But here we are, folks. Here we are. If this doesn't scream to you, false prophet, second beast, world will marvel after the beast, the image of the beast. It doesn't scream to you that, then I don't know what does. I really don't, because this country was founded against popery. And for its initial 100-year history or so, a lot of people were assassinated for not wanting to bow down to the papacy and slapping the papacy across the face, like with the Monroe Doctrine, or all these different, proclamations that saying, we're not going to have anything to do with you, Pope. Well, they paid the price. But here we are, the Pope receives the Liberty Medal, which is supposed to honor freedom of conscience and liberty and tolerance, when in fact, the popes have always been for papal supremacy above all else. They are the moral authority of the world. You have no right to correct the Pope. You must obey what he says in order to be saved, etc., etc. And here we are with the Pope being honored by the second beast as the champion of freedom and liberty and patriotism and all this stuff. What's going on? What is going on? One of the USA most symbolic civic institutions has chosen to honor a figure whose influence extends far beyond American borders. On July 3rd, Pope Leo XIV will receive the Liberty Medal of the National Constitution Center, a distinction awarded to individuals whose lives have advanced the cause of freedom around the world. That's rich. That's almost as rich as Trump getting the Nobel Peace Prize. The ceremony, to be held at Philadelphia's Independence Mall, where both the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution were forged, will take place on the eve of the nation's semi-quincentennial celebrations. Rather than traveling to the United States, the Pope will address the gathering through a live video message from the Vatican, broadcast simultaneously to attendees and online audiences. The award recognizes Leo's outstanding advocacy of religious liberty, freedom of conscience, and freedom of expression, principles that occupy a central place in American constitutional tradition through the First Amendment. Organizers describe the pontiff's work as a global defense of rights that transcend political systems and national boundaries, touching believers and non-believers alike. That's right. There's your mark right there, folks. Touching believers, marks on the head, and non-believers alike. Whether you take the hand or the head, doesn't matter. Just be part of this thing and marvel. And that's what's going to happen, because Pope Leo is just solving problems left and right. He wants unity. He wants peace. He wants religious tolerance. He wants your freedom of speech. He's a patriot. He's the true American. Don't you get it? Trump's the failed American. Look at these dirty Protestants that are so bloodthirsty, warmongers and Jew lovers, and they hate the middle class. They're all about their corporate handouts. And yet here we have this noble Catholic hero who's the true patriot and wants the good of the people, wants to reign in AI, wants human dignity. It's a clear winner, folks, and people are going to marvel after the beast in no time. In no time. It's not going to be hard at all. It really isn't. Pope Leo XIV quotes Declaration of Independence as he celebrates USA's 250th anniversary and accepts Liberty Medal Award. Let's see.
There's the nation 250 years ago in Philadelphia in the Declaration of Independence when it said that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men have received fundamental rights from our Creator, and they include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. May those values continue to inspire all of us in the United States and throughout the world, and together, hopefully we can all work that those freedoms will indeed be a part of the lives of all people everywhere. Thank you very much for that sign. I am sincerely honored and deeply humbled by this award. Words.
Gosh, he knows the Declaration of Independence. He's such a true patriot. He cares about freedom. This is our man. This is our guy. Do you get it? Not like that Trump who just couldn't care less about anybody but himself. This is our man. He cares about the people. He knows his Declaration of Independence. He's all about true freedom. He's the one that we need. Do you see the marketing? Brilliant marketing. I mean, they've had hundreds of years of practice at it by now, but Pope Leo XIV sends letter to American people as the U.S. marks 250th anniversary. Pope Leo XIV has sent a letter to the American people as the United States celebrates its 250th anniversary. The Pope is addressing the American people. And again, consider the context. You've got the backdrop of Trump addressing the American people. What does Trump say? Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. That's his only thing that he says. And he's all about Israel. And he's the best president that Israel's ever had. And the Israel love him. So he's addressing the American people. And the Pope is here getting the Freedom Award and talking about how we need to rein in AI so that people's dignity is kept, and how we need to have family time, and we need to have a family and peace and religious freedom and freedom of conscience and social justice. And now the Pope addresses the American people. In the letter published by the U.S. CCB on Friday, July 3rd, the eve of the anniversary, Pope Leo extends his heartfelt congratulations to all Americans on the occasion of the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Yeah, right. No pope in history has cared about the Declaration of Independence. They have subverted it. This semi-quintennial marks that defining moment in history of the United States of America, July 4th, 1776, that gave enduring voice to the ideals of liberty, equality, and the pursuit of happiness, justice, and the democratic self-government, he wrote. What would you like to, yeah. Do you think the Pope cares about this stuff? Or is this just more snakery to associate Catholicism to Americanism? So that by 2 years from now, you're not going to tell the difference between what it means to be an American and what it means to be a Catholic. There's going to be so much of this propaganda. This is just a smattering. This is a smattering of what goes on in the last month. I don't know when the last VDS was, like, 5-6 weeks ago. The smattering. Imagine the pace of this stuff increasing for the next 2 years until the next election. Do you think it's going to be that hard? Not at all. America is going to be Catholic, friends. And that is the fate that the Bible predicted for you a long time ago. Here's a quote, very interesting quote. Within 20 years, this country is going to rule the world. Kings and emperors will soon pass away, and the democracy of the United States will take their place. When the United States rules the world, the Catholic Church will rule the world. Nothing can stand against the church. I'd like to see the politician who would try to rule against the church in Chicago. His reign would be short indeed. That's Archbishop James E. Quigley. He lived between 1854 and 1915, and that quote is from the Chicago Daily Tribune, dated May 5th, 1903. Now, you may remember the name Quigley. You may have heard that before because it is a name that you should know, and particularly Carroll Quigley. Carroll Quigley was an American historian and theorist of the evolution of civilizations. He's remembered for his teaching work as a professor of the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown University. So Carroll Quigley was a Jesuit operative. And in his seminal works, The Evolution of Civilizations, An Introduction to Historical Analysis, Tragedy and Hope, A History of the World in Our Time, in which he states that the Anglo-American banking elite have worked together for centuries to spread certain values globally. So Carroll Quigley is very much involved with a lot of these different presidents. Did I highlight anything? Yes, and Bill Clinton was very much mentored by him, and he quickly was around Bill Clinton quite a lot. But there was something here I think I highlighted. Maybe not. Anyway, Carroll Quigley, if you haven't heard of him, you can definitely look into him, but it's interesting that they both have the same kind of memorandum in the sense that his family member, I forget what the relationship, if they were cousins or something, or great, forget the relationship, but the first Quigley, that Cardinal, Archbishop, he's obviously a very influential player. Carroll Quigley, very influential player. So keeping it in the family, culture shaping is the name of the game. This is the Project 2025 tracker. We are officially at 54%. That means more than half of this agenda has been fulfilled, and we are in 2 years of Trump's term. So even though Trump is dying and crashing and burning, he's been able to achieve exactly what his Catholic overlords have wanted to achieve for a long time. And meanwhile, all the other culture shaping that's happening, as we've covered today, you can see very clearly that the destination of history is not a Noahide law Zionist empire. It's not a communist situation. It's not a Muslim situation. It is a Catholic social teaching, common good, lukewarm churchianity situation, where you're going to have the Eucharist as part of this situation. You're going to have climate change. You're going to have Sunday sacredness. It's going to be one big Hallapalooza of shenanigans and snake talk and snakery and syncretism, which means mixing truth with error. So, conclusion, as you can see, nothing new under the sun, as we like to say on this show. Please watch my recent video, Independence Day, and learn some important American history and what true powers control the affairs of this world, and especially this nation's history. I've outlined in the past how major judgments were on a Sabbath, which is another interesting pattern. This year, 2026, I think it's very interesting that the 250th anniversary, July 4th, was on a Sabbath. And in many ways, people have called out that the date, 1776 to 2026, that's a death date, not a anniversary. It's a death date, like what you see on a tombstone. And that's true. America is dead. America is dead. And the false prophet is now ready to come into the world. America has always been the false prophet, but its role as the false prophet is going to emerge once its own internal workings have been transformed. America was the sword of the papacy for the last 100 or so years after, 150 years after the Civil War. Now, America's role needs to dial back and needs to turn from being the sword to being the light of the world, right? The light, the counterfeit light of the world, to deceive the nation. So that is happening. That means America as it was needs to die. There needs to be a crisis. There needs to be a social transformation and marketing and all the things that we're talking about today. Many Christian nationalists argue that God's judgments have fallen on America because of our, various things like our promotions of LGBTQ nonsense and whatever else, and because we've forgotten God with secularism. But they don't see that judgment also includes false light. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 9, just the whole chapter, 1 through 9, the devil is authorized by God to give the wicked a strong delusion as a judgment. So God judges the wicked by authorizing the devil to deceive them into great error, in the sense that they worship the devil believing they're worshiping God. That is a judgment from God. In Revelation 16, when you look at the bowl judgments and the sixth bowl, right before the seventh and final, which is the arrival of Jesus, the sixth bowl is when Satan is released. And the purpose of his release is to gather the nations into one final grand act of rebellion. And he is authorized as a judgment. It's the sixth bowl judgment. He's authorized as a judgment to deceive these people into believing that they could openly challenge Christ to combat. And of course, they fail miserably, and then they start cannibalizing each other. But that's a judgment. So judgment does not mean only fire and brimstone or, loss of prosperity or all the negative stuff. Judgment from God is also false light and allowing you to apostatize. Allowing you, of course, God does not allow any of his elect to apostatize, but he allows Satan to deceive the wicked into false light and false worship as a judgment so they can be destroyed. Because God is the ultimate executioner. Satan is just executing the judgment in some sense and deceiving these people. So 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, Revelation 13, Revelation 16, many other places describe judgments by God through Satan to deceive the wicked into a false light situation. False marveling, false worship, great delusion, fighting Christ, etc., etc. Today, after the 250th anniversary, this country has been taken over, and now you are going to see the rise of the false light. And isn't it funny that that judgment has come on a Sabbath? That the 250th anniversary, which is this opportunity for all of this Catholic revisionist history and awarding the Pope with the Medal of Freedom and all of this shenanigans that we're covering, all of that is a judgment from God. But people don't see that part, do they? They don't see that as a judgment because they don't have the proper eschatology and history under them to interpret correctly. For the last 150 years after the Civil War, America was subjugated by the central bankers, by the papal powers, the Jesuits, the various secret societies. And again, it was used to police the world, to do various crusades, papal crusades in the world. And now those crusades are done. Those crusades are done, and that's why globalism is being collapsed by design. Because globalism was never the answer. Globalism would not allow the nations to fall in love with the papacy and feel at ease, because there's always somebody over their necks. So America needs to dial it back, and there needs to be a change. There needs to be some collapse because of that. There needs to be some failures because of that. And then you have a more cooperative global situation. Of course, there's no such thing as a globe, but you know what I mean. So we're going to see a change. We're going to see a change to give everybody a false sense of peace, of community, by removing America's warmongering, tentacles in the world, and reinventing America as a shining beacon of light rather than a policeman of the world who's the overlord and oppressing people. Rather than that, America is the role model that the world needs to follow. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And people will marvel after a counterfeit Christ when that happens. Of course, they'll marvel after many counterfeit Christs. They'll marvel after the papacy, the Eucharist, the Christ of Catholicism. But these are false Christs. And again, I said this before, but there's only one mention of Jesus' appearance in the first advent, and it's very ambiguous, which is the verse in Isaiah about there was nothing really about Jesus particularly that was very attractive. Yet, we have very vivid descriptions of how Jesus looks when he will return, which is his second advent. And the question is why? Because this is obviously very intentional. Well, recently this occurred to me that there is a major reason why this is the case. Because it doesn't matter what Jesus looked like when he first came. You don't need to know that. You don't. What you need to know is what he said. Do you get it? You don't need to know what Jesus looked like. You just need to know, what did he say? But you do need to know what Jesus looks like when he returns. Why? Because from the first advent to the second advent, Satan is thrown down to earth. He's working his final plan for a new world order. There's going to be many false Christs, false worship, false marveling. So you're going to have to understand who is the true Christ and what is the false Christ. Therefore, you are given ample descriptions of what Jesus actually looks like in the book of Revelation when he returns, so that you do not confuse or get confused by all of these worldly counterfeit Christs, the papal Christ, the Eucharist, the feminized Catholic Christ, etc., etc. So you need to know who the real Christ is, because all of these Christs that are false are opposite of the real Christ. The real Christ was masculine and bold. The Sacred Heart of, Leonardo da Vinci Christ is effeminate and impotent. The real Christ was youthful. He was also poor, and he was associating with sinners and the lowly. The papal Christ is old. He's decrepit. He's a sinful man. He's draped in luxury, and he lives in a castle with guards. The real Christ was sinless. The papal Christ worships the devil. He took the offer, as that Orthodox patriarch or whatever he was said, he took the offer that the real Christ refused in the desert. So the devil offered the real Christ, listen, I'll give you my throne. Don't take God's throne, I'll give you my throne, and you can have everything, just worship me. And of course, Christ refused that offer. So what did Satan do? Well, he picked his own Christ. Do you get it? That's why it says in the Bible in Revelation 13:2, that he gave his throne and power and great authority to the beast. The beast is the counterfeit Christ. Just as God gave his throne to the real Christ, the beast is the counterfeit Christ that the devil gave his throne to. The beast is the one who accepted the wager given to the original Christ, whereas the original Christ rejected that wager. So this is who you're dealing with, folks. And he's going to come by way of peace and destroy many. Despite all of these things, people are going to fall in love with these false Christs. The Eucharistic Christs, the feminist, not the feminist, but the feminized, feminine, Sacred Heart Christ of Catholicism, the papal Christ, all in fulfillment of God's word, because that is what's coming into the world. It's Satan's version of the gospel. So we have to be sharp. We have to know our scripture. We have to know our history. We have to know who we are waiting for and who we are directing our energy and mind to. Most of the world is waiting for the old man in the white robe to come save them from poverty, from social injustices, from corporate greed, from AI, from war, from communism, from the Jews. They're waiting for the nice nice old man in the white robe to come and save them, rather than longing for the return of a supernatural God King, a true God King, to come and rescue them from this evil situation, a situation that looks good but is actually evil. True Christians, true followers of the way, wait for his supernatural appearance of God in the flesh, where the world is going to be shaken. There'll be signs in the sky. The firmament is going to crack open. A being of total light and power, riding on a white horse with a sword, fiery flaming eyes, is going to come into view. He's going to levitate you into the air. That's what we're waiting for. That's our hope. Most of the world does not hope in that. Most of the world hopes in social justice issues. I want to have a little more money in my paycheck. I want to have my family time. I want to have my time off. I want to have a nice house. I want to have, all these comforts. And that man in the white robe that's really nice and peaceful and talking about religious freedom, he really seems like he's going to be the one to do it for us. You get it? People are hoping in the wrong things. That's the problem. The problem of the church age is a hope issue. It's a marveling issue. It's a heart issue. It's not an issue of atheism or technocracy. It's a hope issue. So I hope that today has been helpful. I hope you've learned something today. Don't forget to meditate on the true and timeless things. Don't forget to keep the seventh-day Sabbath as a time to refresh your life, to rest from all of this shenanigan, to reconnect to God, to develop your various habits of study, or to simply just relax and enjoy time with God and nature. If you need to be encouraged, go to the encouragement page. If you want some tips on how to be healthy, go to the health page. There's a lot of free stuff there to learn about having better health. If you want to learn a lot, and if you're a paid member, then by all means, enjoy Fennec and use that tool. Have some Bible studies at home, have some group chats, whatever it is. Do something with the information that you've learned. So few people understand the things I'm talking to you about today. And even fewer understand like things that I've talked about in my American history episode. So few people understand. And yet that's the thing to understand, because it's going to inoculate you against deception. So either way, stay sharp, and we'll see you next time. Hope you enjoyed today's presentation. Take care, and God bless.